Hello, and welcome to the CV Retrospective. What's up, Zoe? Oh my gosh. I thought for one last time I would go over all of the fun little moments in the CVs. If those who don't know, for those who don't know about the CVs was my RP series called The Cryptid Verse. It was based on the cryptids that stalk our lovely city. And I thought I would do this for YouTube to have like a little retrospective of all my favorite moments. I'll be posting them in the Discord, and also I'll have this in perpetuity forever. I don't even know where to start, but I basically compiled a list of 12 because 12 CVs, 12 things, and I've listed 12 favorite NPCs, 12 favorite heroes, 12 favorite villains, 12 favorite survivals, 12 favorite deaths, 12 favorite characters of all time, moments, and finally the CB stories. And I'll try to give some behind the scenes stuff about my favorite thoughts. So I'm gonna start. I'm just gonna dive in. Oh, for the yeah. Oh yeah. So I should also explain about for those who don't know. So I broke the CVs into 12. They're 12 different stories, and each one was set in a different time period, a different location, and the players would create characters that very likely would be in harm's way and most likely die. So there were some CVs where some folks died. There were some CVs where everyone died. There's some CVs where no one died, and I had such a blast with it. And I thought I'd go over it one more time because why not? Why not? It's fun. So the first list I want to go through was 12 favorite NPCs. Now NPCs are any characters that I created. So um, a lot of the CVs were driven by characters that I made so that they would move the story forward because the players didn't, know what was coming. So I would make these plans for these stories. I would make these story beats that I would like to hit, and then I quickly found out that I needed to make sure that I had a contingency plan for when shit went left. Shout out to CV7 me, because it happened often. But so I created several ridiculous, wild characters that people both hated, mostly hated, sometimes enjoyed, but mostly hated, because they were mostly pure evil. I'm gonna start with an honorable mention, which is Galil from CV11, Fresh Beginnings. So the conceit of Fresh Beginnings was that we it's these old people who are going to this wellness spa, sort of an end of life care center, and it was really high tech and fancy. And Galil was a sort of a shaman, kind of a like not. I'm trying to think of like a good comparison, like sort of a kind of a cult leader vibes. And he create or them. Sorry, they were non-binary. Creating them was really interesting because I found that Galil was. I wanted to make sure that they came across as like non-threatening, very gentle. Because up until that point, this is CV11, so up until that point, the characters I created were like very obviously evil or very obviously like ridiculous or like hypersexual. And I was like, I wanted to create a character that was very, you know, fully believing that they were doing the right thing and super kind and loving and caring and all that stuff. And Galil was also had two employees named, I forgot their names. It was something and something, but they two employees. This is terrible. I'm gonna not remember any of the stuff, but um, had two employees who they were having sexual relations with. So they were sort of in this what Galil thought was a very open thruple. Um, it became clear later on that Galil was a another incarnation of Gabriel, who was the main antagonist of the entire CV series, and Galil is in another language means Gabriel. So one fun little like nugget of thing that I did was I every time Gabriel showed up in the CVs, I just changed his name, probably to another language or something that meant Gabriel. So Galil was indeed another version of Gabriel. But now we're going to get into the top 12 of my favorite NPCs. Number 12 is Dr. Helsvik from the Fox. Dr. Helsvik, who is a controversial character in the CV universe because he was a staunch supporter of interspecies mating, which is really gross. So he invited, this group of young scientists to help him realize his father's vision. His father was a nut job who believed in interspecies mating, and Dr. Helsvik was trying to bring that to life as well. This is actually this is sort of similar to Galil. This is one of those ones that I really wanted people to feel not threatened by him. Like he was listening to everyone, and he was trying really hard to sort of not push anyone to do anything they didn't want to do, and I knew that I had to come with a character that was not confrontational because of where the story was going to go and what he was going to ask people to do later on. And he was kind of fun, I think, just because he ended up being this kind of a backstage character. He's not really one of my more upfront people that comes later in the list. But he was fun. I mean, he was fun to play off of. It was actually really interesting to play against all the other RPers in 3 because essentially everyone got very upset with him once shit started going left, and he sort of had to be like, no, it's all okay, it's all good, we're all fine. And it was actually kind of a fun challenge, having come from CV2 where the character's a little bit more forceful, and even CV1 where the situation was super forceful. I really enjoyed getting to do a character that's a little more beta, not fully beta, but a little bit more beta. So Dr. Helsvik comes in at number 12. Number 11, Gavin from CV12. He is here from the mini story Freak Like Me. Gavin was, I needed to start CV12 on a bang, and I really wanted there to be sort of this, audacious character who's wacky and very hangover-ish, and essentially Gavin takes his coworkers to this very, hyper cool, hyper sexual, hyper wild bar, and I really wanted to make sort of this like idiot buffoon that people wrote off very quickly, and this was so much fun to play. Like I think Gavin was like one of the more fun characters to create because I think I mean, it's just fun to play it like a coked out fucking psycho. What you come to realize I loved the twist at the end of this, which was that it turns out that Gavin is essentially procuring humans for the harpies to feast on. And the harpies exist in the basement of this club, and Gavin sort of haphazardly, leads people to their doom because the harpies at this point, this is CV12, so the harpies have essentially lost their life force, so they need to feed in order to stay alive, and Gavin sort of paid to do this. And he's still kind of a buffoon. He's still ridiculous. By the end of this, when he mostly successfully gets everyone killed, he gets Maddie's character, Swift's character. Maybe it's just the 3 of them because I know DBS is also in this. But he gets everyone killed except for Marky, which is DBS's character, killed. Which is at the end he's like, "I still get paid, right?" Which is such a great line. I love Gavin. It was a lot of fun to play him. At number 10, we have Believe from CV10, For So Deep Is Our Love, one of my favorites. Believe was a kind of interesting character because I mean, there's a lot of like there's a lot of like weird historical science that kind of didn't make sense with this one. So I mean, kind of. I mean, I took a little liberties, but CV10 is set in the, I believe it's the 1700s or the 1600s, something like that, and and believe is a young islander with acute vitiligo, and so I actually found a really cool pit crew where um, you could have a vitiligo filter. So I added it on this child, and it was really interesting. I was like, oh, okay, like we can have this this sort of kid with this ailment, and the purpose was that eventually he was going to be quote unquote cured of his vitiligo with the crazy events that happen in CV10, where we think that Thomas is this prophet, but obviously we find out that it's the angel, the quote unquote angel. And Believe was interesting because he was essentially, I believe he was nonverbal, or he couldn't speak English. I might be wrong about that actually. No, I think I am wrong about that. He did speak English. That's right. But he has this sort of confidant in the town leader, who is obviously turns out to be another Gabriel clone, or just essentially Gabriel, I guess. It's the first iteration of Gabriel, and and sort of being taken under his wing. And it's the first time we realize that Believe is actually Imani, who is from CV8. And it was sort of fun because it was the first time that I got to play the first or do the first iteration of Believe and or Imani and Gabriel, and they have this sort of inextricable link together that they're tied together through time, and they always keep having to find each other. They're sort of in this purgatorial relationship, which is unfortunate for mostly for Amani. So Believe is kind of one of the more tragic characters, and that by that point, by CV10, I'd created so many villains that it was fun to play a sort of tragic hero. As Dia likes to say, thank you for making the trans person of color a tragic hero. I'm like, I know it's not great, but anyway. So Believe is super duper fun. Um, Believe is also like an interesting catalyst because uh, he ends up sort of jacking up the drama in CV10 with accusings. He accuses Mary of murder, marries the mom from CV10, and that sort of snowballs into this murder situation that happens. And so Believe actually gets I mean it's kind of not Believe's fault because it's all orchestrated essentially by Gabriel, but Believe makes a lot of missteps in CV10 that make you not like him at certain points, which is what I love to do. I love making good characters unlikable and bad characters likable. It's fun. So we love Believe. Believe comes at number 10. Number 9, we have Lucifer from He Is Here, the final cryptid verse story. Lucifer was cool because the final tie-in altogether of having Lucifer. This is the story that I always wanted to tell, which is that like Lucifer essentially was kicked out of heaven, which is biblically true or whatever. But then adding the twist of the fact that he takes on his arch nemesis's identity in Gabriel, becoming Gabriel. So there's this great short story, and He Is Here, called The Accounting Department, where we find out that God, or whomever, is choosing a select few angels to discover what it's like to have a human experience, and because they feel an incoming force coming, and they need to figure out how to stop it and or combat against it. So God puts them through these tests of having these various human emotions, and it comes out at the end that Lucifer is or God needs to choose a couple angels to help with this mission, and Lucifer's not chosen, but Gabriel is. after Lucifer's gone through so many human emotions in this trial, and Gabriel seemingly has gone through none. So it was really fun to play this like hyper, almost theater kid. I was sort of trying to channel like a theater kid situation of like, it's supposed to be me. I'm supposed to get the part. And that was cool to have him be. It's fun to play off of everyone and sort of be this confrontational, overzealous, excited kind of wild person. And yeah, I think what was interesting is that some people really came out of CV12 feeling for Lucifer or Lucy, as their name was, and I love that. That was a huge compliment because people were sort of like, oh, I know, I feel bad for Lucy. I also don't like what Lucy did, but I feel bad for Lucy at the same time. And I was like, yes, mission accomplished. So that was really cool. I love Lucifer. Number 8 is Christian from Force of Deep Is Our Love. Now, Christian was a very, very small character that I I didn't quite expect to get as much love as he did, but Christian ended up being a character that only one of the major sisters sees. So um, in the first part of CV10, you have the majors who are in France, and you have the Carlsons who are in Norway. So in the France storyline, Michelet, played by the wonderful and talented Leah, um, ended up having a conversation with Christian, and this is how Michelet finds out about the boat that is going to immigrate to this island because the majors are not having a good time. Everyone is literally throwing shit at them, and they want to find a new life because it is rumored that Mary killed her husband. So there's sort of these pariahs in the town, and so Michelet learns from Christian that there is a boat happening. Now, the reason why Christian wants to leave, which is Christian, is homosexual. Happy Pride. Christian and his husband want to leave France because he also doesn't feel safe there. So Fergie is the husband's name, and so Christian has this. They're very excited. They're going to go to this boat, and then Michelet tells Mary about the boat that Christian's going to go on, and Mary decides, oh, like, well, our family should get on that boat. So what ends up happening, sadly but not sadly, is that Christian. So basically, the majors take up the last spot on the boat to immigrate to this island, and in Oceania, and Christian and his husband Fergie are not. There's no room for them, so they can't go, and so there's this really sad disappointment scene where they have to stay in France, which I honestly worked out for them because what ends up happening on the island is not good. So it's a very small scene, but I really enjoyed having this very strong side character who's really fun and really sweet, and had this really connective moment with Michelet about being an outcast, and is kind of this more serious human moment for the CVs that I really enjoyed, and I love Christian. I ended up nominating him myself for best CV character because he was a lot of fun to do for the short time that he was there. We love him. Number 7, Imani Abibi from CV 8 and CV 12, where she makes a brief appearance. Imani is a young black teen in the UK who is really into Night of the Living Dead. At this point, Imani isn't aware that she is a reincarnation of Believe from CV10. Obviously, because we're in CV8 not CV10, and we had a really cool time, or I had a really cool time getting to drop these little nuggets about Amani's past. And this is one of the more challenging characters to do CV wise because I found well, I mean, we'll get into the whole CV story later on in my list, but her character was so interesting because there's many versions of her in this story, and you never quite knew which one you were getting, because she gets such a long story, but she basically like there's an evil side, there's an evil version of her that's also running around later on in the story. Um, but I mean, just the purest innocence of Imani in this part of the story, I think she was really cool to play, just to like play a very innocent teenager. There's a lot of like not innocent things that have happened in the CVs up until this point, so it's fun to literally just play a teenage drama. Imani got to have sort of a little romance with, I mean, an almost romance with Dave, played by Dio, um, Helly Award winner Dave, by the way, who played with Dio, which was that was a lot of fun to play the like will they won't they of it all. And I mean, that was another Imani was another case where she she didn't always make like the best decisions, um, but she was sort of lovable in that way too. So it was this fun little uh, fun little like tug of war to figure out like who she was. And by the time we get to CV12, she ends up being this shepherd for Alex Rose, played by the wonderful Zoe. Um, who she gets to be sort of the shepherd, and we realize that the reason why Alex is going through the events of CV12 is because of Imani. Imani has actually um, helped her uh, see these visions of what's happening to the various cryptids in present day. And so Imani is essentially the hero. So is that so trippy? Yeah, Imani is essentially this kind of shaman esque hero, because you realize as that she's been in. She also is in CV11. She is. I forgot her character's name, but she's also reincarnated in that one. Like she's reincarnated several times, so she's been in this weird link with Gabriel, and it's this awful yin and yang that she can't get out of, and she can't remember each time she gets reincarnated with him, um, that it's happening. So Imani actually, I think it means believe in like Swahili or something. It means everything is just. I'm so lazy. Everything's just another language. That's it. Every character is just like the same thing in a different language. Um, so yeah, Imani ended up being it's also another tragic character. I love Imani. So that was a cool one. Number 6, Miss Manchu from CV7. Miss Manchu was fun. I think at that point I was kind of overplaying like really sweet characters, and I was like, I'm just going to play a 1000% cunt. I was just like, I want to play a horrible, horrible person. So Miss Manchu, she inherited this huge spa. I was about to say hotel, but it's essentially a spa. This is CV7 takes place really really early in history. I think I don't remember, like maybe eight. I think that was 1800s. I think CV anyway. So she inherits this huge hotel, the spa thing, and she invites all these people from all over the world, and she's really ruled by money, and she's ruled by fame, and she is an aging woman, and she's very concerned about her beauty and her attractiveness to men and kind of women. Miss Andrew was low key, little, like, giving a little bi energy, but she she essentially has this incredible like desire to be wanted in this strange way, and it was really fun to play this just horrible. Honestly, it was very much inspired by Memoirs of a Geisha. If you've seen that movie or read that book, um, and the like villainous character of that one, like just she's this, she's older, she's seen things, but like she's obviously uh, made a lot of her success through like being beautiful, and charismatic and rich, essentially. So it was really fun to play her, and she probably has the most contentious relationship with the players, or my portrayal of her was the most contentious I've ever had with the players, of just like full on fights. I mean, there's one scene where she is literally being chased by the whole cast, and like they go on a full on like witch hunt, which is fun. And I mean, you realize later on that she's being possessed by the spirit of her sister, um, which is like a whole other side note. But I think just the purity of playing the person that they see is was so much fun, so satisfying, so mean, so awful, um, and yeah, Miss Manchu is such a favorite. Uh, Rest in peace to that lady. Number five is RTM Ferguson from CV2. Now RTM is probably I mean, he was at the number one. I rearranged this list a few times, but he was number one and number two for a while. He's definitely the most controversial of probably all my NPCs. Um, so I mean, I obviously got a huge inspiration from the film Orphan and the true story of Orphan, but he's a child, quote unquote, who who is adopted by the Fergusons along with these other people. We realize the Fergusons are like adopting these um, children who no one else wants for various reasons, and uh, RTM like just goes around to all the different kids and tries to find ways to harm them essentially. And the big reveal is we'll talk about it later, but we come to find out something very surprising about RTM. But I think playing a character with that secret, because I knew obviously I knew what was going to happen, but playing the child and trying to keep him like childlike while everyone knowing the secret, or I'm knowing the secret no one else is, was so delicious and so much fun. Oh yeah, Zoe wrote, now that I've actually seen The Orphan, I get it now. Yeah, it's wild. And if you haven't read the real story about Orphan, you should, because it is wild. Um, and RTM also has a equally as disturbing reveal later on, which we'll talk about later. But I mean, he's one of the most despicable characters. I think it's funny because I think Miss Manchu is like, she's the most hated just because she's like outwardly hateful, but RTM is like insidious and creepy, and the fact that he has kept up this racket for so long is really frightening and uncomfortable. Um, and it was so much fun to play. It was so fun. I mean, I can't believe I got away with doing CV2. It just is so awful. RTM is wild. Um, Number four, surprisingly enough, is Krista Major, my very first NPC from the CVs, CV1, The Vines. Um, I loved. Uh, she was interesting because I got to do a lot of inner monologue stuff. This is early on. This is early days. We didn't really know how we were going to do the CVs, or like what the general vibe and flow of it was going to be. So there's a lot of internal monologue, which was fun playing a teenage girl, because there's this tug of war of like, I'm perfect, everything's fine, and in her internal monologue is like, I'm struggling. And so she's this popular girl who is like a former nerd, and she kind of tries to float around to everyone, and she tries to be friends with everyone, and she gets she's very unsuccessful in her facade of trying to be all of these people to all of these people. And the early parts, being on the plane before they get to the ruins, was so much fun, and getting to play with Alcoholic Nick and Jax and Ray and Leah, everyone. It was so much fun, like getting to be getting to be these teenage characters with actual teenagers. I was essentially, most of the people in the RP were actual teenagers, so they did very well. But Krista was really really fun, um, just because I mean she got to be. It's just fun to play this sort of She's not really duplicitous, but she's this person who is trying to figure things out. She doesn't get a lot of time to, unfortunately. Um, Number three is Mary Major from CV10 For So Deep Is Our Love. As I mentioned earlier, Mary is the matriarch of the Majors. The CV10, the conceit is that there are two families, the Carlsons and the Majors. And Mary Major was had such a complicated backstory, and it was so interesting to me. And I thought about like films like Chicago, and I thought I was listening to a podcast about a a woman. I mean, generally women who kill, but like I was listening to a podcast about Black widows. I was also listening to another story about a woman who essentially had to kill her husband to because he was abusive and he was going to kill her, and of course she got a lot of shame for it. She I believe she was got the death penalty for it because the justice system hates women, and still to this day. And so it was really interesting to play a character with the backstory of she's with this man who's horrible to her, who's abusive, and it's it's unclear whether or not she killed him. Now the truth of the matter is that she didn't kill him. I believe he was drunk and he ended up slipping and hitting his head and accidentally killed himself. But she, of course, was blamed for it because woman, and she has to sort of carry on this this family, and she's hiding a couple secrets from them, um, because it turns out that she had children by another entity, we'll say, um, and she was carrying on these love letters with this person who she met, who turned out to be Gabriel, and so she has all these kids with this person. So the argument, he shouldn't have hit her, but the argument was not entirely unwarranted. But Mary Major goes through like the most, I think, out of any other NPC. She's ostracized and she's poor. She has to take care of four girls, and they're all various amounts of challenging. And it was really fun to play a mom to the other RPers. That was interesting. Just sort of like what I know about them, like as real folks, and the ways in which I can, Dio was playing the sort of obstinate one, and but kind, and like Swift was playing the sort of like the good girl who's like has curiosities, and yeah, it was just a lot of fun. And her story arc, I mean, she goes through some shit, um, because she wants to protect her girls, and she doesn't trust when she gets to the island and they meet the Carlsons, and um, she feels like Hildegard is making a bad choice by picking Thomas Carlson to get married to, and it kind of makes her hysterical because she has a lot of flashbacks about powerful men and what powerful men become once you settle in with them, and so she really didn't want that life for her daughter, and it ends up essentially getting her killed. Um, Mary has to be locked up for being, uh, too outspoken, which is ironic because she essentially tries to teach her girls not to be outspoken. So it's funny because she, as sort of the paradox of being a parent, is that she comes to this island because she wants to marry off her girls, and then she realizes once they start to get married, she's like, no, 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 but not that one, not that one. And that was fun. It was really fun, and she has a very tragic end, unfortunately, but um, she didn't get to see her daughters turn into harpies, so that's good. So shout out to Mary, we love her. Number two was Gabriel from CV10, For So Deep Is Our Love. I mentioned him earlier when I was talking about Believe. He's another one of those characters that is like super cool, super chill, big red herring. Everyone assumes that he's like a bad guy, um, because man running village, big, big cult vibes. Um, but that was another thing where Gabriel, he comes to this town, and I mean, this is basically what we know of CV10. By CV12, we know what the truth is. But CV10, it's just a man who's religious, who wants to start a loving community, and he enlists the help of the Carlsons and the Majors, and he works with them essentially to make sure that everyone has a good time. And uh, he he's it was just a lot of fun to play. I mean, he Gabriel's essentially really a part of the cast. I think a lot of the other characters that I brought to the CVs were like in opposition of the cast and sort of like to drive the story forward, but Gabriel was really he was really there to sort of work with everyone, not against everyone, which was really really fun. I love Gabriel. And then by CV12, we know the truth. We know the truth. And then number one, my favorite CV character that I've ever created was, of course, I have to give it up to the Helly Award winning Kathy Turner / Cassidy Taylor from CV4, the dating game, and finally, Where She Meets Her End, CV12. He is here. So I'll start with CV4. So Kathy ends up being probably the I mean, so we meet her as a contestant on a '60s TV show called The Dating Game, and she's trying to find a suitor, and that was, I mean, that essentially was a lot of fun just to sort of play up the like do 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 like the bachelorette type situation. Um, and then we find out things are nothing like they seem, and she's put these men through some really horrible things, and all for the all in the hopes of getting pregnant. And she's another one where sad backstory, valid sadness, but goes about it all wrong. Um, I'm really interested in characters who have very real problems, but then like have like very negative or incorrect responses or like solutions for those problems. And that's why I love Kathy. She's just like, I can't get pregnant. My uterus doesn't work, but oh, no, it's not that she can't. It's that Roland can't. Her husband can't. His sperm don't work. So she's like, but also I think something was also wrong with her. Something was also up with her internals. She was like, I'm going to, trick these men into impregnating me, and it's going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. And she thought that was a good idea. And by the time we get to CV12, and she also survives, which is interesting. She's one of the quote unquote villains that survives. And by CV12, she realizes, we realize she's the weeping woman, as we know, the woman who is constantly pregnant. And she's been pregnant for like 20 years. She's been 9 months pregnant for 20 years or something like that. And it's horrifying, and she hates it. And done, it's kept her young, so she's like able to be youthful, but she also is not giving birth. So imagine just being 9 months pregnant for your entire life. That sounds horrifying. And she goes on some dates, one of which is a date with the gardener, who we'll talk about later, which is hilarious. Um, and it she ends up meeting Maddie's character, who's a barista at a coffee shop, and by that point she's had to change her name because her what she did in the events of CV4 are like known, so she had to change her name from Kathy Turner to Cassidy Taylor, which like, come on, girl. Um, and it ends up being this. She finds herself back in old habits. You know what I mean? I think she wants to have this real relationship with this woman or this person who she's having a connection with, but then it always gets weird. Like it starts like a cute relationship and then it has to get weird. So um, eventually Cassidy like tries to get her Maddie's character pregnant um, with a parasite, which is like big sort of wild reveals in CV12. I love that story. Um, she tries to cook Maddie's character raw meat so that they could grow a parasite together in her body, which is like, oh, so gross, so very very gross. Um, so I love this character. I mean, she's so desperate in all the wrong ways, and she's so very misguided, and I just think she's so much fun to play, and I'm happy that she won a heli, and I think R.I.P. to her. Sadly, her fetuses killed her. Um, and yeah, that's my list. Yeah, that's my favorite NPCs. Old Kathy gets the top spot. Um, and yeah, um, so I'm gonna move on. Oh, by the way, I'll post these in the lobby, um, so that I can uh, have these here. But yeah, I loved making the the NPC characters. They're just so much fun. I mean, a lot of them have to do a lot of the legwork for for the story, but I mean, I didn't mind it. It was fun. It was fine. It was fun. Um, so the next group. Sorry, I'm like posting this in the lobby right here. Oopsies. I should have this ready beforehand, shouldn't I? But you know me. I like to be unprepared. Keeps life interesting. Um, so the next list I want to do is favorite CV heroes, top 12 favorite CV heroes. Um, uh, these are the people who everything else is going to be other characters, by the way. So well, I don't think my characters show up again. So everything else is about everyone else. So mostly. So these are the folks who I deem to be sort of the catalyst of each CV and the driving force, the forward moving, the protagonist, if you will. Um, I'm going to start with some honorable mentions. Um, One of my favorites from CV9 is Dark Wolfie, Dio's Dark Wolfie. Dark Wolfie was a wheelchair bound, very kind of lives in a hospital, a la Sword Art Online, if you've ever seen that story arc. Um, and Dark Wolfie is interesting because, like, really kind of a hero by default, because there's so many awful folks in circles. But I just love Dark Wolfie's sort of uh, reticence to play the game, but also reticence to like trust anyone. It's quite sad, like a sort of like a tragic hero. Um, and I don't know. I just love what Dio did with Dark Wolfie. And then the other honorable mention is César Leon or Legion from CV 7 played by Swift Cut Lassie. Um, I loved Cesar really became a hero because of the sort of the side thing that happens where Cesar gets locked in a room with alcoholic. Oh shit! Oh my god! I just fucking knocked my headphones out. Hang on. Oh, I found it. Hang on. Hold please. 1 second. Do do do. Okay, I'm back. I'm back. I can't believe I just fucking did that. I need to stop swinging this shit around. Okay. Anyway, I'm back. I'm gonna put this over here so I don't break it again. Um, where was that? Yes, Cesar has this really great scene where Alcoholic Nick's character locks Cesar in a closet, and they have this whole side story where Cesar's like trying to get away because Nick does something really great. Where I mean, he loves to play just psychopaths, and Cesar has this really kind of action sequence with 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 fucking what is his name? I'm gonna find his name really quick because I can have it on hand. um I think it was Alberto. I think it was Alberto, yes. um and they have this crazy tussle, and eventually he gets out, and they both end up dying. But Caesar was such a, I mean, just for that moment, Caesar was such a cool hero. But now we have to get to the top 12 list. These are my favorites. You know, love everyone. It mostly about the characters. It's not totally about the players, but I really the characters, I think, in the terms of the story. But number 12 is Kitty Starfire, played by Alma Kitten from CV9 Cycles. Um, Kitty Starfire is the backstory of Kitty is that she is I believe she's a hit for hire, and she unfortunately was hired to take pictures of Dark Wolfie, Dia's character, and sell them to an unknown entity. We find out that that unknown entity is like a sort of snuff porn site, which is horrible. But Kitty Starfire does not know that. And what Kitty Starfire ends up becoming is this hero who's trying to fight this game and trying to figure out how to best this game, and trying to stop people from killing each other, which is great and noble. And I think Kitty is also sort of struggling with her inclination to kill people, but I think she sort of sees this is a necessary end, um, to get the right people out of the game, and or the wrong people out of the game rather. And so I just love sort of I think I don't know if Kitten intended this, but having I loved having her sort of try to figure everything out, and eventually it doesn't work out in the end because she ends up getting she ends up getting murdered by essentially Alex and Soph's character. Fucking God, names are gonna be so hard for me. Mars, and it was so that moment. I mean, we will get to that moment, but um, I really think that Kitty Starfire was kind of the hero, the hero that you thought was going to be the hero of CV9, and I do think that uh, her death was a huge shock that we did not expect, and yeah, she's great. Number 11, we're gonna have Alma Kitten back here. We have Melita Ferguson. Melita is a youngster who just the sweetest. I believe she was, excuse me, I believe she was like 10 years old or something. Really sweet little girl who again, like, not a hero in the sense of like she is, she's saving people or anything, but she is sort of this tragic hero of that she trusts her mom and she trusts her family, and she doesn't think anyone would do anything bad, and eventually she gets murdered by her mother, which is so sad. The scene where her mom essentially tells her that she's going to take her swimming, and eventually drowns her is so horrifying. It's so horrifying and so horrible, and Melita became this sort of heroine of the CVs ever since, just because she didn't deserve that. She's a sweet little innocent angel, and she didn't deserve that, and that's really why she's on this list. We love Melita, and we'll never forget her. Mostly. Um, Number 10 is Katya. I'm not going to say her full name. I'm sure Swift could, but it is Katya, um, from CV5 Enemy of the State, played by Swift Lassie. Katya was interesting because Katya sort of became the hero of CV5 after the very unexpected death of Boria. Um, and uh, um, Isidore Immortel, played by Nalm, was also like kind of off on his own thing, and everyone else was kind of off doing their own thing. So Katya really took the reins and was trying to figure out what was going on, as they were kidnapped and held by this um, in this prison where they were cooking kids, where they were fucking cooking some kids and turning them into meat. And Katya there's one point where Katya goes through this mental. They all have to go through, sort of fight their mental demons, and they each go through this mental journey. and Katya has this really touching backstory with her family and losing her family and her family trying to kill her, and it's really, I don't know, it's really powerful, and I think that Katya ended up being, um, I think there's another universe in which Katya survives CB5. If anyone deserved to survive CB5, I believe it was Katya. That's one of those deaths that I was like, damn it, I don't think that's the way it should have gone. I think Katya should have survived, which made me so. I mean, it's the roles. It's not my fault. It's the roles. It's the roles. Um, so yeah, Katya didn't survive, but I think that um, her sort of drive to keep everyone safe was what put her in the hero spot. Number 9 is Alex Rose, played by Princess Zoe from CV. I've put it as CV12 he is here because Alex Rose is not quite a hero in CV9, but Alex Rose is interesting because totally unexpected. Did not expect for Alex to become the hero of essentially the entire CVs, but Alex, when we meet her in CV9, is yeah, Princess always said, I didn't expect Alex to survive. I did not either. Um, Basically, the conceit of CV9 was that whoever won CV9 would go on to be the catalyst for the events of CV12 and defeating Gabriel. And never in a million years did I think it was gonna be Alex, aka fucking the fuck was Alex? I know her as Alex now, so it's fucking oh, Red Like Roses. Yes, Red Like Roses 31. I did not expect that to happen. Um, but Alex essentially gets dragged through all of CV12 and learns about all of these different cryptids losing their life force or being used for something improper. And the point of it all was to for Alex to understand that the real villain was Gabriel all along. And Alex becomes this like one of my favorite kind of heroes, which is like a what? Like total confusion, always confused, never knows what's going on. It's sort of like I don't know what to do, but I guess I'm doing this now. Okay. Um, and I love I love Alex. She's kind of the everyman. Honestly, if the CVs were a video game, Alex would be the perfect protagonist because it's kind of what video game creators look for insofar as that they're like, oh yeah, like you can imprint sort of anything onto Alex. Um, so I think she's such a great hero, and obviously she's the hero of the CVs. I mean, she literally saves everyone. It's awesome. Number 8 is Alice, played by May from CV12 from the side story. I forgot what the side story's called actually. I think it was no. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna know the names of things that I created. It's a side story for my Gemini, which is um, she is a twin to Scott, um, and they get separated in their youth. They have a very tumultuous childhood, and she ends up becoming having this really horrible tragedy where she ends up being poor, her brother ends up being very rich, and she loses a child in in a fire and from a fall, which is really horrible. She has an infant that she has to take care of and she has to bring to work because she can't find a babysitter. And she ends up having this really sad death. And but it ends up launching her career as a multi-million-dollar book author person. And uh, and eventually she has to she finds out she's sick and she has to come to her brother for organ donation, and he refuses and she dies. It's very sad. I mean, like Alice is another one of those like tragic CV heroes where I mean Alice is one of those tragic CV heroes where like it just horrible things happen to her, and it's just so sad. You know, she ends up having this like this really interesting trajectory, and I love what May did with Alice. Um, just sort of this like constant like pick yourself back up, pick yourself back up, pick yourself back up. and you know, she ends up, you know, dying at the end, which, you know, it's sad. I love Alice. I think it's one of the more real CV stories um, in the series. Number seven is Yasui Bouillant, or Sui, played by Vel from CV7. Knee, um, really, really interesting performance. I think Sui is, you know, she's a maid. She works for Miss Manchu, who is an absolute tyrant, and and what ends up happening is that, you know, Shadow's character Lee ends up falling in love with her, and everyone kind of ends up falling in love with her, and she's torn in between everyone in this really toxic way, and she becomes this like plaything that everyone starts kind of using, including Miss Manchu, and it's really sort of sad to watch. I mean, she's not exactly a tragic hero. She does die at the end, but she's not exactly a tragic hero. But she's one of those characters who is like, she's just trying to do the right thing. She's just trying to work. She's just trying to keep her head down, and everyone around her is fucking up. And she's also human, and she falls in love with one of the guests, which she's not supposed to because she's a servant. And I think that it's one of those characters who becomes a little. I mean, I guess a little bit of a tragic figure. Um, but I mean, she also has this really incredible scene where they are in the water, trying to escape from the monster that erupts, and it is this really sad scene of just watching everyone like slowly die. Um, and her death ends up being, I think she ends up drowning, if I'm not correct. If I'm correct, yeah, she gets eaten in the moat while trying to swim to the surface with Ivan. Yeah, yeah. They have this really horrible scene where everyone is like trying to get up to the water, you know, get up from the water, get out of the water, get away from this creature, and she eventually gets eaten, and it's really sad because I think, you know, she didn't deserve it. I also put everyone through the ring with that. People rolled horribly, but I also made them roll a lot of things, and yes, it was that was a tough one, and Suey will always live on in our hearts. Number six, we have Cheeks Ferguson from CV12. I mean CV2, played by Leah. Um, Cheeks is one of the more interesting characters because totally nonverbal, um, and she really ends up sort of being the main like driving force to get the other kids out of there once the parents start killing everybody. Um, Cheeks has this really, really powerful scene where she's running with, I think it was Shadow's character, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was Joseph Ferguson. So she, you know, the events of CV2, the father starts killing all the kids. You have to go back and see what happens, but you know, starts killing all the kids, and Cheeks and Joseph make a break for it, and they try to run down the. They live in this mansion. They're trying to run down this really long driveway, and there's this horrible scene where Cheeks like looks back and realizes that their dad's killed Joseph, and she has to go on without him, and it is so scary. Like, you know, here's this like total nonverbal child, and she has to run away from her father, who's like shooting everyone, and she's actually the first one to escape. She runs into town, and she has to leave her brother Dennis behind to fight father, which is like also really scary. Um, and yeah, it's good. I mean, Cheeks is that moment I think solidified Cheeks is one of the great heroes I think of the CVs because she tried really hard. She tried really hard. Number five is Kieran Bakshi, played by Maddie from CV3 to Fox. This is also another situation where there's one pivotal scene that really made them a big hero. Um, Tragically, because did not fare as well as Cheeks, but um, Kieran has this really great scene where, you know, he's invited into the situation of the Fox. He's a scientist, um, and once the creatures of that Dr. Helsvik is trying to fuse together escape and are pretty fucking feral, Kieran decides to go upstairs and try to figure out a way to get out of this building, and really sadly gets eaten by wolves. But there's this great scene where it's just him versus the wolves, and he's trying to figure out how to find a key or some sort of elevator shaft to get out of here. And he also experiences watching the interspecies birth in an elevator, which is also a fucking crazy scene. And he just has like this incredible side story by himself that unfortunately ends in his death. But it is so fascinating to watch, and I was on the edge of my seat just watching Kieran go through the fucking vents and like get to the elevator, experience this fucking creature, get born out of this woman, and then like get out of here and like escape the wolves. Like it was really, that scene is really, really pivotal and nail biting, and I love it. I love Kieran. Number 4, we have Dave Lister, Helly Award winner Dave Lister, played by Dio from Night of Living Roleplay. I mean, Dave is probably one of the coolest character ever in the CVs. Really, really fun. Confused about his sexuality, or I mean, I think it's confused about his sexuality. I don't know that he was gender. I don't know. But Dave ended up being a huge sort of catalyst for like, we got to get the fuck out of here. Once the zombies start popping up, Dave takes who he can and tries to leave, and has another really, really nail bitey scene where he's trying to escape the very fast zombies. Zombie Imani, uh, along with Lara and Wes, played by Maddie, and Dave has this moment with like the car and like trying to get the keys for the car and like trying to get away, and it is so exciting to watch. And I think Dave is 100% the star of CV8, like unequivocally, and unfortunately dies. But I think Dave, he's so cool and he's so badass, and he's sort of this quintessential 80s hunk. um and I love Dave. Dave's great. Number 3 was Sebastian Smiths, played by Jax from CV1, The Vines, the very first one. Sebastian, I mean, The Vines, it could have been anyone's game in terms of heroes. Like, I think it was sort of like Circles. It was sort of like whoever kind of came out on top was the hero. But Sebastian, um, shockingly, I mean, was the only one to survive CV1, and it was really by the hair of his, whatever. It was very surprising to watch him get to the end, because everyone was dying in the most horrific of ways. Everyone was rolling poorly, and it was wild that Jackson were figuring out. But Sebastian also has this really great storyline where his ex-girlfriend is coming on the trip, Nikki, played by Ray, and it actually comes down to the two of them. The two of them are the last ones left, and Nikki ends up like falling through the ruins, and Sebastian has this like moment of like trying to hold on to her for dear life, and these like exes who like maybe still love each other like end up having to separate, and Nikki dies. And then Sebastian has to like run, past all these vines, past all the people with guns, and there's this great scene at the end of the vines where Sebastian finds the truck to get out of here, and like books it, gets out, and then at the very end you see the vine like go over his eye, and you're not sure if he's infected with the vines or not. So cool. I mean, I love Sebastian, just sort of like because of what happens to him. I think he's sort of a quintessential like a hero in the traditional sense of like he just made it to the end. He's a survivor. Really, really cool stuff. Number two is Magnus Carlsen, played by Amakitten from Force of Deep Is Our Love. Magnus starts off in sort of that stereotypical. He's a playboy. He's 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 selfish and he's a nice guy, but he's kind of he's a playboy. Um, and then he falls in love with Victoire, and he ends up really once we get to the island, he and the Majors and the Carlsons meet and everyone couples up. He really works with Victoire to make sure that to figure out what's happening, and especially with Thomas, like what's going on with Thomas, why is he so weird, um, and he also, I mean, he works a lot with Gabriel to figure out like what's going on with Mary, and he talks to Mary. He has this great scene with Mary, um, where she like asks him, like she really begs him, like please don't let my daughters like go to ruin, please. And it's such a touching scene, and I think Magnus surviving at the end of CV10 is so fitting because I think he really I think he did. I just think he deserved it. I just think he deserved it, and he took Victoire and he got the fuck out of there for as much as he could, and he uh, he just sort of became this unlikely hero, which is also really fun. I think his his who he was before the events of CV10 wouldn't have necessarily lent themselves to being a hero, but he was thrust into this role of becoming this heroic character, and I think he's one of the best. And number one, my number one favorite CV hero is none other than Victoire Major. I think Victoire is is this incredible, like she's so complex and layered, and she's existing in this world that doesn't respect women, and she wants to learn, and she wants to be independent, but she also wants to be with Magnus kind of, and I think she has this really interesting and intense dynamic with her family, where she so frustrated with her mother, but she loves her mother and she understands her mother because she's the oldest, and I think she's just so endlessly layered, and and her fate is kind of, I mean, it's really sad because we come to realize that she has the Harpy DNA, and she eventually becomes she escapes with Magnus after everyone is dead or has become a Harpy, and and then the sort of final moment where she is no longer on the boat that they are sailing away in together is really heartbreaking, and realizing that she has become a Harpy is like, oh, not Victoire, not Victoire, no. It's yeah, it's just so sad. So that's what happens with that. Yeah, Victoire is absolutely my favorite CV hero. I think that the journey, the sort of epic journey that she goes on, is so full, and right to the very end, um, it's like chef's kiss. It's so perfect, and I love Victoire so much. So yeah, those are my heroes. Now let's get into my favorite villains. Let's start with honorable mentions. I think Lucifer, played by moi, is just a fun anti hero, anti, whatever you want to call it. I Lucifer using this like jealousy, this sort of need to be seen as a way, as a excuse to be incredibly selfish and incredibly um I don't even know. Just creating a lot of chaos and not good things is wild. Um and yeah, just a fun villain to play. Um and another honorable mention is Charlotte McNally, played by Down by Six. Now, DBS had been creating a couple like just insufferable characters, which I enjoy, and Charlotte was one of them. Charlotte was just so so uh, so annoying. Such an annoying character. And it wasn't even the most. There's another annoying character that he ended up making that we'll talk about later. Um, but Charlotte was just like, she was obsessed with this horse, and she was like, make sure nothing happens to my horse. Make sure nothing happens to my horse. I'm checking on my horse. Where's my horse? And not happy with the accommodations. She wasn't happy with Miss Manchu, which is understandable, but also like, ugh. Charlotte was just an annoying, evil little person. Not even. I mean, the thing is, Charlotte's not even really a villain so much as she is just a shit heel. um, so there's that from me. But let's get into my villains, my top 12 list. Number 12 is Timothy Peter Carmine, played by Swiftcut Lassie from CV12. He is here. Timothy is by the time we get to CV12, we are seeing sort of the end of these cryptids' lifestyles or lives. I don't know. I said lifestyles. Gay. Um, and there's this cult that has been birthed um, that is obsessed with Friendo, cult of Friendo, and Timothy is the head of it. And Timothy lets people of all ages in. Um, so Timothy decides later on that they are going to go to the lake to call upon Friendo once and for all. And what ends up becoming apparent is that Timothy kind of is Friendo? Question mark? Question mark? Question mark? It's a little unclear, but it's interesting. I mean, he ends up trying to get the young girl Millie to submit her, essentially kill herself in the lake, and that's when the other cult members are like, "Hey, I think this is actually probably not a great idea to kill a child. I don't think we're into this anymore so much." And like, I mean, it's always fun. I mean, Swift doesn't always. I mean, Swift at that point rarely played like psychopaths. So that was really fun to sort of see this character who is so far gone, but really in control. Like not a like wild twiddling the mustache kind of villain, but just a just a fucking creep, dude. Like just a creep. And yeah, love me some Timmy. Great job. Number 11, Dr. Helsvik from Fire Demon 2021, played by me, of course. Got to toot my own horn, I guess. But Dr. Helsvik, I think, is a really interesting villain because, like I said earlier, um, he's incredibly sure of what he's doing. I mean, he believes in this uh, interspecies mating thing that his father has started. He's like, yeah, no, we're doing that. That makes sense. And I think because he spent so much time on it, I think he's felt really empowered to go forth with it. And I think the best villains are the ones that don't know that they're wrong. And Dr. Helsvik definitely does not understand that he is wrong. Um, and yeah, so I think that he's not a he's not an aggressive antagonist, but he's sort of this idealistic antagonist that has this really gross scientific drive. So I love Dr. Elsbeck. Number 10, as I mentioned earlier, DBS has some really horrible characters sometimes. Um, but one is most despicable out of all of them, and that is Andrew St. Cloud from Night of the Living Roleplay. Andrew St. Cloud is a toxic, toxic man. Just so toxic. He is like in this sort of like relationship with this woman who he thinks he like is very controlling, and he's just so mean, and like coming off of Knee, I really feel like I almost feel like DBS was like making like a was like, oh, you hated Charlotte? Oh, really? Charlotte was too much? Welcome Andrew. Andrew is just like, he is a shit. He is a little shit. It's very rare. I usually care about when the characters die. Like I'm like, oh no, that one died. I Andrew was one of those people I was like, he couldn't have died soon enough. And he didn't die soon enough. He did die, but he didn't die soon enough. I was like, no. No, no to him. Ugh, Andrew was just despicable. I couldn't stand him. He is just, and he ended up, thank goodness, he ended up oh shit, that's knee. Let me go to night. Let me replay. How did he die? He ended up getting eaten by one of the, yeah, turned into a crawling zombie in the basement while trying to save Celia. So yeah, he ended up, I don't think he died, but he he did turn into a zombie while trying to save his girlfriend Cecile, not Cecilia, Cecile. And yeah, it was the Cecile Andrew relationship was just toxic, and ugh, Andrew's awful. And if you haven't seen the fucking, oh god, the goddamn whatchamacallit, the spin the bottle game or whatever they were doing was just, oh, never have I ever or whatever. It was bad. He's an awful person. Awful. That's the thing. Also, technically not a villain. Like, not technically, the villain of that story is Imani or Gabriel, I guess, but he's one of those like little shit villains that just, ugh, he's so awful. Number 9 is Miss Nini, played by Amakin from He Is Here, from the story All the Boys and Girls Love Miss Nini. I think it's All the Girls Love Miss Nini is what I called it. We finally got to see the doll in action, literally and figuratively. Kitten really wanted to play the villain of this, and I was like, of course, yes, do it. Um, Miss Nini uh, basically these girls have this Twitch channel, this live stream channel that Miss Nini like can hack into, I guess, and she takes over the live stream, and this little fucking doll, like, Chucky could never. Like, this little doll is so strong. Eventually, once the two girls who are running through the mall are, you know, aware of what's going on, and they have to fight this doll, Miss Nini like fully nearly kills them and gets very close and turns Swift's character uh, into or possesses Swift's character at one point. Uh, yeah, it was very 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 good and very creepy, and Miss Nini is like the one two. It's too creepy. And it was cool. Kid and I worked together and we used some sound stuff, and it was very cool. Very cool. Miss Nini was very creepy, very sad figure. Eventually got destroyed, thankfully, at the end, but yeah, not good. Not good. Um, Number 8 is John Freda from CV11 Fresh Beginnings, played by Swift Lassie, once again on this list. John Freda is interesting because he's also like one of the like, he's not the main antagonist. That would be Galil, but he is an antagonist in the fact that he does have inclinations to kill, um, and he's like obsessed with fire, and he's very he's a weird guy. He's very strange. Hang on one second. Had to scratch my throat. That was a really awful sound. Um, John Freda, and also young John Freda, by the way, because in Fresh Beginnings we have the clones, and the clones are like killing each other, and young John Freda is terrifying. Just a full-on psychopath, pyromaniac, maniac. Just kill, is wild. I don't remember what young John Freda's body count was. Let me see. Let me see who ended up. Young John. Oh yeah, he got into a duel with Haru. But did Young John? Yeah, Young John killed Young Haru. Um, did he kill anybody else? Um, yeah, I don't think anyone else was killed by Young John, but just like just a pyromaniac, you know, kind of weird psycho man. Um, and like once shit starts hitting the fan, I believe it was I don't know if it wasn't Faith. I think it was maybe. Yeah, the character maybe was trying to help all of the once the fire started at the facility, was trying to help everyone. Oh no, because John started the fire. Was trying to help everyone get out of the facility. Couldn't stop John from lighting that shit on fire. So John is this weird sort of side villain, um, who isn't technically the antagonist, but I think was deliciously evil in this weird way. Um, Number 7 is the gardener, played by Alcoholic Nick, also from He Is Here, the final Cryptoverse story. He's in. Um, he's in. He's one of the people that Kathy dates. He's the date before we meet the final date, and he is just this incel weird guy. She goes out to this country. She has a date with this guy who is a total misogynist, total weirdo who lives with his mom who may or may not be alive, maybe Norman Bates situation. And he essentially like assaults her. He's a horrible date. He he doesn't believe in women's equality. He's a very horrible person, and he ends up like essentially trying to kill her, and she's pregnant at this time, and he he ends up trying to kill her. Um, and it was wild. Oh yes, Nathan's in here right now. Focusing play as Hannibal Lecter. Nick has a unique ability of playing psychopaths. I don't know what it is. I've talked to Nick many times. He's a very sane person, but he is very good at playing psychopaths, and he just is. His little section of He Is Here had me. I had to nominate him. I thought it was so good, and he tells me all the time. He's like, "Please don't nominate that. It's so bad. He's so awful." Um, but he has this unique ability to create these very creepy characters. How does the psycho come out of that mouth? I don't know. I don't know. So, Alcoholic Nick is definitely on the top 12 favorite villains of the CVs. He he's just wild. If you haven't read that section, it is very good. Number 6, once again, we got Alcoholic Nick on here. We got Paul Marcia from the Vines. He, once again, Nick, this is the first psychopath he created. Um, Paul is this really, I mean, there are a couple very weird characters that came out of the Vines. You start to realize that some of these kids are not all right in the head, and Paul is one of them. Paul actually orchestrates the first death in the CVs when he ends up pushing one of the other kids off of a cliff, which was so shocking at the time. It does not make my favorite moments list, but it was so shocking at the time when Nick killed. Nick has the first player kill ever in the CVs, and he told me that it was planned, and he was like, and I had no idea that it was going to happen, and I was like, oh my god, Paul is a psychopath, and Paul, brilliantly played by Nick, weaves his way into weaves his way through the cast or through everyone and tries to figure out how to pick everyone off, and on top of that uses Shiko, played by Leah, as a pawn, because Shiko sort of becomes the sort of front facing psychopath while Paul is like the in the shadow psychopath who's full of pulling the puppet strings. Paul is fucking evil, pure fucking evil. He also like tries to like get Krista killed very early when they go on a date. It's very weird because Krista has a crush on him, and then he like attempts to kill her on the date. It is so wild. Paul is wild. I love. I love it. Paul sounds like what fire would be IRL. Yeah, kind of. I don't think I'm as smart as Paul. Paul, like, yeah. Paul meets a very satisfying death though in CV1 when he falls through. He tries to escape and he falls through the vines, and there's this really great scene of like he's in uh, this very dark area. He's broken his leg, and he tried to go down on the rope and he broke his leg, and then the vines just like fully eat him alive. It's very disgusting if you want to read it, but really satisfying, really satisfying. Number 5. Ooh, this is a good one. This is a good one. Number 5 is Off to Mars, played by Maddie from CV9 Circles. Now, at this point, Maddie had only really played good people. really great at being good people. If you've ever talked to Maddie, sweetest person on earth, sweetest, sweetest, sweetest. And Off to Mars was Maddie's chance to really play a capital C. Cunt. Just horrible. Um, Mars was this like very privileged, very upper class um, character who was sort of like obsessed with the '90s and and just ended up being as the game went on, as the players were killing each other, she ended up being this. I mean, treating it like a game. Like she was just sort of like again, sounds like fire. I mean, kind of. I'm more off to Mars than anything, and she has this really pivotal scene where she has to, the conceit of circles is everyone votes on who needs to die next, and there's this incredible scene which I will get into later, but Mars makes a cold-hearted decision and does it without remorse, and it's solidified with um, putting her on the greatest villains list. Just fucking wild, and I love it. I love Mars as like delicious character, delicious character. Number four, I'm putting myself on this list, of course. This is RTM Ferguson from CB3, the Fergusons. Fired in a nutshell. Privileged and obsessed with the '90s. That is me. Um, RTM Ferguson, who is, uh, he's not who he says he is. He's a very, I talked about him earlier in the NPCs, but he's another one of those like very sneaky villains. Uh, what he ends up doing, which I will get into later in CV1. Um, I mean, let's just list the things that RTM does. I mean, he commits he does rape someone. He also has incest. Incest happens. Um, and some of the lighter things like impersonating a child. RTM is a horrible, very not well being, and is I mean, just what he does in the Fergusons is really horrifying. And again, still cannot believe I got away with making the Fergusons. He's pretty disgusting, but we've talked enough at length about him. Um, every character Fire speaks, it just sounds like a self description. Oh my god, I hope I'm not like RTM. Number three, Cassidy Taylor from CV4 and eventually in CV12. Um, she's pretty, another one of those villains who is like great intentions, wrong method. She tricks a bunch of men into impregnating her through a device, and she just has so little self awareness. And it's interesting because she once I got to do her again in CV12, she has this sort of inner life, inner monologue thing, and but she has self awareness enough, and then she just goes over the line, just over the line. I talked about her a lot in my favorite NPCs list, but she's a trip, you know, not great. Number two is Shiko Sari, played by Leah in the Vines. Um, I mean, talk about psychopaths. I mean, Leah has a very similar thing to Nick, is that they're really good at playing. They being Leah are really good at playing psychopaths, but they're more like good at playing frontward facing psychopaths. So like Shiko has this really great. I mean, Shiko has this really great scene where Shiko. I forget. Shiko's a he, I believe. I think so. Um, no, it's a she. Never mind. Um, Shiko gets blamed once it comes out that she and Paul have killed Matthew. Um, Basically has this horrible accusatory scene where everyone's like, "You're fucking crazy! You killed Matthew!" And she like loses her mind. Like she can't believe that she's been discovered, and it's so terrifying and weird. And um, she spends the majority of the story trying to kill everyone too, and it's having these two psychopaths, one very smart and one sort of not. I mean, I wouldn't call Chico smart, but one not super smart. Um, is is so satisfying to watch, and Chico has a really satisfying death. Probably one of the more disgusting deaths, where she has her leg blown off by a shotgun when she tries to leave, and um, once she like tries to wrap up her leg, one of the vines like gets shoved into her mouth and chokes her to death. So eventually, she like just has this constant onslaught of vines like going down her throat, and it is so horrible. It's so disgusting, and but you know, some say well deserved. I say yes. And I think the number one, the absolute, my favorite CV villain, I've said it time and time again, has to go to my friend Useless Shadow, who played Li Zhang from CV7 Me. If you, I mean, I think what Shadow does with Lee, it's another one of those things where like I've met Shadow, I've talked Shadow several times, nothing like this character, but perfectly perfectly maps out an incel. And so Lee goes from being this sort of subservient, servant at the hotel, and then slowly becomes more and more enamored with Sui, who was on our heroes list. Becomes enamored with Sui, becomes resentful of the guest, becomes resentful of Miss Manchu, and just slowly like loses his mind. And the pacing of the losing of the mind is so slow. It's such a perfect slow burn. And eventually by the end, Lee is just fully killing people. Just fully killing the cast. And I mean, Paul walked so that Lee could run. Like, Lee is responsible for, I think, half the deaths in Me, um, if I'm not mistaken. And so there's this great scene where once Lee loses his mind, he the lights turn out, once the dolls also are sort of in helping him out, I guess. He turns off the lights in this one room where all the guests are staying, and he just one by one picks everyone off, and it's one of my like shocking fucking moments because he kills Krishna, Kiara's character, kills Charlotte, thank goodness, kills Tang, yeah, I think he kills. Uh, Oh, and he kills Alberto. Yeah, he kills Alberto. Yeah, who after, um, yeah, it's so satisfying, and I think what Shadow does with Lee is it's so good. But we'll get into it later. I think Lee is unequivocally the greatest CV villain we've ever had, for sure. Now we're gonna get into our top 12 list of CV survivals. We're about halfway done, almost. Um, CV survivals. Number 12 is Marina, played by Maddie. CV12, he is here. I did not expect Maddie to get out of the clutches of the Weeping Woman, aka fucking what's her name, Kathy. Um, but she does. So basically, Kathy is like obsessed with her fully now, and has invited her over. She knows that Marina is talking to the feds to try to get her arrested because everyone's looking for her after she committed this really disgusting sex crime, um, of getting these men, blah blah blah. And Marina goes over to her house and serves her uncooked meat, and it's revealed that like she's been feeding her raw meat so that she could grow a parasite inside of her body, and the the reveal of that is like so horrifying. And I remember people DMing me being like, "Oh my god, no!" And eventually, Marina has to contend with the fetuses. So eventually, um, Kathy gives birth, and these sort of murderous fetuses come out of her and try to kill Marina. And they knock her out at some point, and actually try to pull her into the body. So that's what um, the fetuses do, is they like consume them and bring them inside of Kathy's body. And Marina fully escaped with the help of some of the cast of CB4 coming back, and poor Marina. She just went through a really horrifying experience, and she saw a lot of really disgusting stuff, and was nearly had a tapeworm inside of her, which is disgusting. Um, so that's number 12. Number 11 goes to Haru Takahashi, um, who is from Fresh Beginnings. Haru was it's another one of those CB moments where we were unclear who was going to be the hero. It looked like it was going to be Cedric, um, but I think it ended up being Haru because he spent the most time away from people. I think he was, he's a samurai. He's an aging samurai, and he is now trying to live a more quiet life, and he's struggling with how to figure out how to do that, and still have his dignity, and live by his code. And he ends up really getting out of the events of CV11 alive, mostly because good roles. They all had really great roles, and also not grouping up with anyone, which is really smart. Yeah, Haru ends up leaving CV11 with just one other person. I think CV11. Most people died. Yeah, it was Takahashi and Thomas. Thomas ended up living that one. So yeah, and Haru has a really big fight with who was it? Oh yeah, it fought two people. Haru killed young John, and young Robert, the U's that were created out of the bodies of these old men. And yeah, it was really cool, really cool. It was unexpected. I did not expect. I've never seen. I don't think I've ever seen uh, a CV character have to go up against so many people and survive. That was really cool. So yeah, Haru is definitely a survivor. Um, Marky O'Connell, played by Down by Six, is our number 10 slot from CV12. He is here. Marky survived a very harrowing experience of go. So I spoke about one of my favorite NPCs. Gavin is leading all of his coworkers down to this basement because he has to get the harpies to feed on these humans because they are losing their life force. And Marky watches everyone else die. It has this horrible scene with Swift's character, um, where like they're grabbing through the elevator, and one of the harpies pulls Swift's character and rips in half, and essentially Marky is left with the hand of the arm of Swift's character, and has to escape, and eventually actually helps out in the next CV story, um, driving folks away from the murderous um, friendo cult. So Marky survives technically two CV stories, which is, I mean, can't get much better survival than that. Yeah, it attributed to good roles, and Marky was just a really surprising survival. I thought it was going to be a TKO, um, but Marky survived two CV stories. Number 9, we have Benjamin Bright, played by Leah from CV8, Night of the Living Roleplay. Benjamin, this is another one of the situations where it was just like Leah just made good decisions, left when it was time to leave, um, and rolled well, and that was it. I was not expecting Leah survived two times when I didn't expect them to. That and Enemy of the State, and Benjamin Bright. I put this on the list because I love the scene uh, after, like, it's very clear that Ben has gotten away from everyone. Ben is actually one of the few uh, characters to really like have a really scary moment with Gabriel. And there's a moment where he's sitting on the train. He's like finally going to get away, and he sits next to Gabriel, who like gives him a train ticket. It's very eerie, very good scene. Very big foreshadowing um, for the events of, I think it was the events of CV. I don't know, some foreshadowing. Um, Number 8, we have a new challenger coming in. Alexander Maxwell Knox, played by Shy from the Fox. This is one of the most interesting survivals because Alex, um, was a part of this team of scientists that was going to work with Dr. Helsvik. Everyone was pretty much not on board with what happened, and Alex was not on board with what happened until the very end of the story, when the big twist was that Alex decided to go work for Dr. Helsvik, and they escaped together, which was like, could not believe it. Couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe he made that decision, and yeah, Alex ended up like running away, and it's one of the more mysterious endings for a CV because we don't really know what happened to Alex. Um, we just don't know. We don't know what happened, and I love the ambiguity of that, and I was really surprised. I was surprised. I didn't know Shai was going to do this, but Alex sort of like teamed up and was like, "Yeah, I'll help you out," which was so cool. So, um, yeah, that was a big shock. I love that survival. Um, Dennis Ferguson, played by Noob123, from CV2, The Fergusons, has another really mysterious survival after dad and RTM and mom have killed everyone. Um, uh, he has this really interesting moment where he finally gets away from everyone, and his mother actually ends up. Um, the mother ends up coming to her senses and saves him from father, and just drives him somewhere. So like it's weird because she doesn't try to save all the kids; she just saves Dennis, and Mother Ferguson just like drives him away, and he asks like, "Where are we going?" And she like refuses to tell him the answer, which is like so creepy. I don't know where she's taking him. So like, I've talked to Noob about this before, and I believe he said that he thinks that she just killed Dennis. She just like fully killed Dennis, but I don't know. I don't know what happened. So I would love to know. I don't know. Speculation. I don't know. Interesting, creepy death. Number six is everyone in the dating game. Um, I mean, this is the first time we had a full party save. One of I think only two times it happened, but yeah, everyone survived CV4. Was not expecting that. Um, the big reveal, which I'll talk about later, was shocking, but couldn't believe that this was like what was. I couldn't believe that everyone was going to survive that one. They all got saved by the police, and everyone just rolled really well. And honestly, everyone's survival came down to one final roll, which was how they were going to get out of the machines. I'll talk about it later. And it ended up being that everyone survived. Everyone ended up getting out okay. So it was a good one. I love that survival. Um, Number five, we're back to the Fergusons. This is Cheeks Ferguson, played by Leah. Again, I talked about it, and in the heroes section, I love Cheeks like having to watch um, brother die and then going and getting help. I just think it's like such a powerful, probably the most powerful next to the Milita stuff. Such a powerful moment, um, and and is the catalyst for why the police get there. So um, totally cool hero. We love it. Number four is Madison Parker from Truth or Tale. Once again, we got, or I think it's the first time we have Shadow on here. Yeah, this is the first time we have Shadow on here from Truth or Tale. But first time Truth or Tale is mentioned. Madison Parker has a really interesting ending, which is that everyone else died from Truth or Tale because of the Mothman and the Mothman creatures. And eventually, the police pick her up, and it becomes clear they start doing an interview, like an interrogation, essentially, to see what happened. And and she starts to get framed for the murder. It becomes clear that the town is all in on it, and she's getting framed for the murder of her entire crew. And so it's so unclear what happens to Madison. I've talked to Shadow about it before, and he does not have high hopes for Madison. But the sort of like the sadness of like, God, she goes through all of this shit, everyone dies around her, and then she gets fucking trapped by the police, is such a cool survival moment. I love that. Number three, is a twofer. It's Magnus Carlsen and Victoire Major. After escaping the everyone turning into harpies or just dying, eroding in front of them, um, their sort of big escape moment is so romantic because they're the only couple that like escapes, and Magnus being the hero that he is. Oh my god, I love Magnus. Stan Magnus. Um, gets Victoire off the island and finally gets on this boat, and then you have this really sad moment of realizing because all the major sisters end up turning harpies, so you get this really sad moment of Magnus waking up and realizing that Victoire has transformed and has left the boat and is no longer Victoire, and it's so sad and it's so horrible, and it's like a bittersweet moment for Magnus, and I talked to Kitten actually a couple days ago about what happened to Magnus, and Kitten said Magnus, moved on and took up the fortune, the Carlson fortune, and lived happily ever after, but always thinks of Victoire. And I was like, oh no, oh, it makes me so sad. Anyway, love that one. Number two, um, Alex Rose in CV9 Circles is so shocking. We said it earlier that I cannot believe that Alex survived. Red Like Roses is, as we know her at that point. Um, the conceit of Circles is like everyone is picking off people one by one. They have to kill somebody, and the fact that Alex was the final survivor was incredible. Um, Red Like Roses was not a likable character. Not even a not likable so much in the fact of like wasn't really a villain, also wasn't really a hero, just like not a likable character. So like it was so shocking that Alex ended up that Red Like Roses ended up winning, which made it all the more exciting. Like I was like, oh my god, I can't believe it was truly it was truly like RNG at work. Like I just feel like it was very it was you couldn't predict it. No one predicted it. I remember I made a list of what I thought the order was going to be. Alex, I had Alex dying like early, so super early, um, and just such a great survival, and then like goes on to become the hero of the whole series. Oh, Zoe says, yeah, I think you thought I'd die like third or second. Yeah, I did. I thought you were gonna die third or second. Yeah, totally. So love that one. And the number one CV survival, I think, is Sebastian Smith, the original CV survival, played by Jax. CV1 The Vines. I think that the just like the fact that Sebastian had to watch every single one of his classmates get murdered, and then by the end, just like you think that he's out, he's like getting there, and then you realize that he might have the vines inside of his body, and it is so like it's so like body horror inducing, and it's also like creepy. It just is like you don't know it's real, you don't know it's not, like you don't know if it's reached the brain, you don't know like if he's paranoid. It's this sort of like almost kind of moment that I love. That survival, I love. I couldn't believe that Sebastian, like role wise, because for CV1, because I didn't know what I was doing at that point, that it was brand new, the deck was stacked against everybody. So it was like it was amazing that Jax rolled so well. But yeah, the deck was totally stacked against everybody, and I remember the rolls just being incredible. And Sebastian definitely deserves the top of that list. Um, okay, I think I'm gonna take a quick little breaky, and then we're gonna do deaths. We're gonna do characters, moments, and stories. So I'm gonna take a quickie little breaky, and I'll be white back. I'll be white back. I'll be Caucasian back. And we're back. We're back with more CV goodness. Enjoying all of the CV retrospectives, doing all of the things, enjoying all the things. Hey, Zoe, how's it going? So now we're gonna dive right into what did we say? What are we at right now? Oh, favorite CV deaths. Oh yeah. Favorite CV deaths. So we have a few. We have quite a few. I have a few actually. This is where the honorable mentions. I have a lot of honorable mentions for this. I'll run through them quickly. Um, one of my favorite CV deaths is Marin Crescendo from Truth or Tale. When Marin just, I mean, just the death itself is very exciting because Marin ends up getting ripped apart by children, just like very Children of the Corn esque, just completely gets like goes into the cave and gets just torn apart by children. Which like what is a worse death than getting killed by kids? Anyway, love that one. Um, Shiko Sari from the Vines, I mentioned it earlier. Shiko um, gets shot, gets shot in the leg by a shotgun because so the locals who are trying to keep the Vines out of town are essentially holding these kids hostage. And once Shiko becomes the first, I think one of the first ones to get off the ruin and gets shot and starts to bleed out, and then one of the vines just juts down Shiko's throat and chokes Shiko completely. It's one of the most disgusting deaths, and by that time we hadn't had any like really gruesome deaths, so that was like vicious, brutal, vicious, brutal, brutal, brutal. Um, RTM Ferguson, CV2, the Fergusons had a very satisfying death. I mean, it was pretty clear that RTM was just a menace, and so once the policeman came and finally just shot him in the head, it was very, very great. Also, like I took inspiration from Cowboy Bebop. There's a great scene where Spike has to shoot another kid he's actually an old man, and he's has this. It's not really a spell, but he has some sort of medallion that like keeps him young, and once he gets shot he becomes his age, and got big inspiration from that, so love that. Javi and TC, played by Swift and Down by Six in CV 12, he is here in the short story Ensanglante, which is French for covered in blood. um, it was very clear that they were the protagonists, like they were the heroes. We were very clear they were the heroes, and then they once I mean we got a lot of prep time, a lot of stuff, a lot of talking, a lot of history to talk about, and then finally once the death started, they immediately got killed, and it was one of those like shocking like um, Hitchcock Psycho kind of um, deaths where it was like, oh my god, I can't believe they died. I didn't expect that. Um, and yeah, so that was a big shock. Um, Another honorable mention, Cassidy Taylor, and he is here. I mean, her own kids, her own fetuses choking her to death. Uh, Great, love that. Oh no, shot. I think shot. No. Cassie got shot. Also just another satisfying death. We love that. J.M. Jones from Down by Six, he is here. Um, from There's Nothing Worse Than Having Everything and Still Feeling Sad, the side story. JM realizing that like in order to keep the Mothmen at bay, he has to let them consume him, which is great. And it's also mysterious. We don't know what happens to him. We don't know if he got taken away or if he got consumed or whatever. He got eaten. Great one. Laura from CV8, Night of Living Role Play. Excuse me. Played by Alma Kitten. Fully, fully gets away and then runs into a tree and blows up a car, which is amazing because that's something that actually happens in Night of the Living Dead, and so she literally repeats the role play of the movie that she's doing, and Laura's the only one that actually fully dies in CV8. Everyone else turns into a zombie, but Laura fully dies. That was a really kind of hilarious death. You're like, God damn it! Of all the things, she could have gotten away. Could have gotten away. Elena Chapman in CV3, played by Zozo, um, gets mauled by wolves. Another one of those sort of like I always love a death where like it just like a ton of enemies like swarm. That's like a bit. I love that. I don't know why, but I just do. Um, so definitely Elena's death by wolves is very very sad and horrifying. And final honorable mention, is Samson Carlson, played by Silver Little Wolf from CV10, Force of Divas Our Love. It just, the very sad, like, I think Luna did such a good job of sort of like, he goes through the history of his life, which you imagine happens when you die, which is like going through the history of his life as he's like slowly becoming this, like, his body's not reacting well to this unearthing of this creature that's trying to come out of him, and his death is very body horror painful and gross and awful, and you should read it. But let's get into the actual list, the top 12 list of favorite CV deaths. Now there's a lot of deaths, and we love a death, but there's so many, and we enjoy it. The my favorite, my Ara's here. Hi, Ara. Number 12 death is Matthew Jones, the original death, the number one. No one can take it away from him. The first death of the CVs, Useless Shadow. Poor sweet little Matthew Jones is the party splits up, which you never do. Party splits up. Matthew goes with Shiko and Paul, who we don't know by that point are fucking psychopaths. And Matthew is like, they're standing on a ledge. Matthew looks over the ledge. Paul pushes him off. It is like, it was so shocking, and it was such a like ferocious way to just like kick off the shitstorm that happens after the vines. And Dirk, oh my god, Dirk. We'll get to Dirk. It was so shocking and unexpected, and they had planned it, and I loved it. I love they didn't tell me about it. I loved it. Was so good. It was so very, very good, and unexpected. I'm so happy. I had to put him on this list because that death is iconic. Millie, played by Noah from CV12. He is here from I don't remember the side what the small story was called, but Glow. It's from Glow. They're in a circus, and what ends up happening is that they are realizing this benefactor comes in and tries to sort of split up this traveling circus group, and tries to find a way to promote them in a much more grand way, and is trying to make cuts and see who should make the cut and who shouldn't. And a fight breaks out, and in great CV fashion, an unexpected casualty happens. Basically, a fight breaks out, and this sweet Millie is just like a sweet, soft-spoken little child who like had a really hard life, was like literally trapped in a cupboard. Oh no, in the folds of the wall. That's right. His Millie's dad used to like keep her in the folds of the wall for punishment, and she ended up accidentally getting stabbed. It was so sad. It was so sad. She didn't deserve it, and it was like one of those like, no, ugh, the sweet innocent one gets killed. So that was very, very sad. I love that death. That was pulling all the heartstrings. Shout out to Noah. Then we have number 10. OR is typing. Number 10 is Cedric Hester from Fresh Beginnings. Everyone knows we can't have a character unless they have a horribly heart-wrenching backstory. I know, that's right. Cedric Hester, played by Maddie from Fresh Beginnings. Cedric, I mean, Maddie fucking went off. Huge backstory. Cedric ended up being killed by his younger self, and I think he was. Hang on, let me just make sure. Let me refresh. I gotta refresh myself. Because they all were being taunted by their younger selves, and yeah. So Cedric sort of had this really long story, long scene with young Cedric where he was, trying to play mind games with him and trick him, and eventually he bludgeons him in the hallway. And it's just, I think it's more sad because it's just like Cedric had. We learn the most about Cedric's backstory and his life as a magician, and sort of how much joy he brought to everyone, and his death was really, really kind of, we thought he was gonna hopefully beat his younger self, and he didn't, and it was very, very sad. Number 9 is one of the more unexpected ones. Borya Ivanov, played by Down by 6 from Enemy of the State. that was one of those ones where we were not expecting Boria to die. A fight broke out very quickly in the cell that everyone was being held in. You know, they were enemies of the state. They were anarchists, and Boria eventually gets into a fight with some of the prison guards, and DBS. This is DBS's first CV, mind you, rolled horribly and had his head knocked against the concrete walls and internal bleeding, died. And yeah, it's one of those deaths that everyone's like, no. I remember Leah was crying, fully actually crying about this, and yeah, I think it was looking like Bori was going to be the hero of CV5, and he ended up dying very quickly. And that was another one of those ones I was like, I wanted to like cheat. I wanted to be like, oh, let's keep him around a little bit longer. Like it's his first CV. But yes, there's Jesse, my crowning achievement. I was one of the few. I think it was probably the first CV death that people were really like. Well, besides Milita, I think like were really like shocked by. We're just like, I can't believe that this is. Why Boria? That's not fair. Um, yeah, so that was surprising. That was surprising. Um, is that dice? Oh Jesus, that's what we should have had. We should have made someone with a D1000. Number 8 was Alice. Alice, played by May from CV12. Alice has a very, we talked about it earlier, a very tragic story. Lost a kid, and eventually she realizes that fireball damage. Eventually she realizes that she needs I believe it's a kidney she needs some sort of life threatening transplant, and the one person that could do it refuses to do it. So this is a great confrontation scene where she meets up with her brother, and he tells her like, you fucked my life, like you ruined my life, we could have had a good relationship and you chose not to. And she was like, hey, I need this organ from you, otherwise I die. I need you to understand that. And she was like, will you help me out and keep me alive? And he says no, and he turns away and walks away. It's like one of those cold-hearted moments in the CVs, because she's a twin, or she thinks she's a twin anyway, and so um, she needs a perfect match, and her twin brother says, no, you can die, which is like, oh my gosh. Shadow, I mean, I know we're talking about May here, but like Shadow really, like, Shadow has such a great instinct for choosing the most like cruel thing, and I was like, oh, it's so good. So Alice ends up dying of like of some sort of cancer, organ failure, because her brother won't help her. Very sad death. Um, Number 7, Kieran from CV3. We talked about earlier. Maddie has this really incredible like journey with Kieran, where Kieran decides that, they're trapped in this room. There's wolves all around. Kieran's gonna try to get help. So Kieran like goes through the vents, falls through several times, um, finally gets trapped in this elevator. Watches this horrible like half animal, half human birth, which is horrible, and then gets out of the elevator, gets up to another floor, is like about to escape, and then like tries to go toe to toe with the wolves. The wolves finally get to him and kill him, and it is like, it's one of those like, no, no moments. We can't believe that Kieran gets killed. It still irks me to this day that Kieran died. Um, it's also one of the things. There's a couple times. Yes, exactly like what Art just posted. Literally that moment, you just see the wolf just like turn and snarl, and Maddie made a grave decision that I will forever shame them for, which was that like Kieran chose to like try to tame the wolf. I was like, no, I'm fucking eating you. Are you kidding me? I'm fucking eating you. I was like, Maddie, why did you do that? I was like, I think Kieran could have gotten away had he ran. I think he could have gotten away. So it's one of those deaths. I'm like, oh, damn it. Why'd you do that? But we'll get to the real. There's another death that's even more like, oh my God, why'd you do that than that? But number 6 is Sophia Williams from CV3, The Fox, played by Useless Shadow. Um, uh, Dr. Helsvik ends up poisoning or giving someone some psychedelics. Uh, Leah's character actually, psychedelics, and I'm trying to remember Leah's character. I will get to it. Um, yes. Oh, chemo. Yeah, chemo. Um, tries to gives chemo some psychedelics, and in his fucking drug state, slashes Sophia in the throat. It's the first CV death of CV3, and it is like so shocking. And Leah to this day hates me for that thing. Um, and Leah's not going to beat the psychopath allegations or psychopath character allegations, because it was another moment where it was like we didn't have a lot of player v player deaths, but I love that one because it was just so shocking. And Sophia was kind of like a Millie character where very sweet, um, you know, very 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 just kind, sweet, didn't hurt anybody, kind of thing. So it was very sad. All the sweet people die in the CVs. Sweet people don't make it. Um, so now we're up to number. What number is this? Oh, 5. I can count. Number 5 is Krista Major, played by me. CV1 The Vines. This was another one of those shocking deaths. Um, the kids all finally get to the ruins. Uh, no one knows that Matthew's died yet. So by this point, it becomes like this mystery, and they finally get to the vines. And I roll a 1, and immediately Krista is shot in the head by an arrow. And it is one of those, like, it's the very first like wild thing that happens in front of everyone in the CVs, and it's such a sort of like jump scare moment almost. Um, yeah, so one of the villagers who is trying to protect everyone from the vines that are being contained in this like ruin area, sees these kids coming, is like fuck out of here, and kills her immediately. And I just rolled that 1, and it was like I love that death. It's so shocking, it's so in your face, and you just don't see it coming. And I love that. It's very early also because Krista seems sort of like the hero. I love the gifs being posted in chat right now. Number 4 is like one that's not really often talked about enough, but it is really terrifying to me anyway. Michelet Major from Leah in CV10 For So Deep Is Our Love. Now I have to talk you through this one because this one gets a little bit complicated. So I'll explain more about like why this happens in my favorite moments, but um, she so everyone is transforming into harpies. All the majors are transforming into harpies for a certain reason, and basically during Hildegard's transformation, she goes into this dream state. She can't really figure out what's happening, and she starts to take flight, and she's like in this sort of dream, like I'm like a bird, very sort of like angelic thing. And then when she comes to, she wakes up, she realizes that she has her sister in her mouth, and she's killed her sister, and is like this really sort of horrifying. I mean, Hildegard has just I really made Swift do some really horrible things. CV, but that one is like yes, Nelly. Alexa, please play "I'm Like a Bird" by Nelly Furtado. Um, she in her transformation kills her sister, which is very very sad, and also I think kills her baby too. I think Michelle's baby also dies too. I think. Um, so it's very very sad. Um, let me see. What is number? Get the fuck out. Number 2. Oh, sorry. Number 3. Excuse me. Keeping with the Force So Deep trend is Thomas Carlson, which is like Thomas is he's had quite a journey. He's become one of the most popular people in town. He's a preacher. Yada yada. Um, Once his transformation begins, he ends up having it because of, oh shit, hang on. He ends up having it because of oh, there we go. Okay, sorry, I was looking at, there's some weird stream remote thing. Anyway, his transformation was happening right in front of the love of his life, um, and they were sort of reaching out for each other, and it was like it was so sad, and like they were like, it was so romantic, and they were like literally hands outstretched, reaching for each other, while they're both transforming into these horrible creatures, and yeah, it was sort of like this very sad emotional moment of Thomas, you know, realizing that he was going to die in front of the love of his life, and then the love of his life also watching him die is very, 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 very sad. Um, hang on, did I cut out? Am I still here? Am I still here? Can you hear me? Hang on one second. Let me make sure. Let me make sure. Oh yeah, I'm still. Okay, good, 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 good. Okay. Because I think I did for a second. I think I cut out because it said like your voice is being connected somewhere else. Um, oh God, that's weird. Well, good thing I'm recording straight from my thingy. Anyway, um, number two is probably one of the most controversial deaths in the CVs. Delta from A Noob 123 CV1 The Vines. Delta had gotten away from everything. Delta had, I put everyone through the ringer of roles in CV1 The Vines. And it was kind of set up for everyone to die, and pretty much everyone did, except for Delta. Delta finally got through the vines on the fucking whatchamacallit. Um the vines in the ruins, got through the gunmen who were next to the ruins, got through the forest where there are more vines, and finally got in a car. Finally got in a car. And was ready to drive away. Fully ready to drive away. And then Noob makes one of the most grave mistakes in all of CV history. He sees one of the gunmen to the left of him, and he can leave to the right. Delta chooses to run over the gunman. The gunman is of no consequence to him. I don't think the gunman has a gun. Just Delta wants to run over this man. Noob successfully runs over this man, but then rolls a 1. So Delta runs into a tree, comes flying out of, this is why seatbelts are important, people, comes flying out of the car, runs headfirst into a tree, and dies. It was like, I remember when we were doing CV1 The Vines, we were like, oh my God, why would you do that? He could have left. He could have just driven off and he would have survived the CVs. And it has plagued Noob ever since. We could not believe it happened. We couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. And I think the number one death, because it's so emotional and great, is Alex Rose, played by Princess Zoe from CV12. I think like the, you know, after everything had happened, Alex saves the day, and she has this moment where she's an old lady now, and I thought it'd be fun to sort of use the roles at you know, to count down her death, and she's like, she goes down, and she has to, I forgot what her, she basically had to roll backwards, and finally when she got to a 1, she passed away. It was so sad. It was so emotional. I was like getting a little verklempt when I read it. I was like, oh my God, Alex. Anyway, Alex Rose for sure is like, I think the most iconic CV death of all time. I think so. I really think so. Hang on one second. I'm gonna try to do a thing. Let me see if this works. Hang on. Can everyone hear me now? Can everyone hear me now? How about now? Oh, great. Okay, great. Yeah, so for sure, for those who missed it, iconic death, the most iconic death is definitely Alex Rose from CV12. So now we're going to get into, this is the biggest one. So this is my favorite one. Um, my top 12 favorite CV characters of all time. Some of which are in this chat right now. So I'm gonna start with my honorable mentions. This is based on like the performance, what I think folks did with their characters, everything. So number one honorable mention. We have a few honorable mentions. So Dave Lister, Helly Winter Dave Lister, played by Dio. I think what Dio did with Dave was so smart, super layered, super interesting. Um, I think Dave was like was just like so um, interconnected. Like I think what Dio did with like having very specific relationships with each of the characters was so smart. I just like there was so much intelligence to the way that Dio like came at the role. I love what Dave did. Um, and I think like also the emotional journey and like the backstory of like Dave's sexuality and like trying to figure out things. It just so smart, so good. Love it. Another honorable mention, Samson Carlson, played by Silver Luna Wolf. Samson actually was a full disclosure. Sam was in my top 12, and and then I rearranged this list 18 million times. I still am not confident in it, but I love Samson Carlson. I think what Luna did with Samson was so interesting. Like I think I don't even know how to describe it, but like excuse me, I feel like she was like in another universe Samson is the main character. Like I think Samson is the main character in another version of this story. And and just has a really really uh, like interesting journey and like Samson also is the only of the pairs because you know the Carlsons and the Majors are getting together. Samson's the only one that doesn't match with his pair, um, and he sort of is like trying to figure out how to like let her down easy. That was really brilliant. I love the intro of Sam, like when Samson joins us and like is sort of this man of the woods. I just love what Luna did with Samson. And then by the time we get to Samson's death, which is so harrowing and really sad, it's super earned because we've learned like so much about him at this point and like oh my god, and I also love what Luna did with like the relationship of his um with his brother, like who he idolized. You know, he Augustus had like gone off and sort of betrayed the family, and Samson was like kind of trying to chase that dream. And I was like, oh, it was so interesting, so interesting. And I love what Samson did. Again, like if you ask me tomorrow, Samson is in my top 12. So I don't know. Another honorable mention, Alice, played by May. Oh yeah, wait. Or I said Luna's characters always have like highly intricate backstories. I clearly love it. Love Samson. Um, Alice from CV12, played by May. May, this is the first time May was in the CVs. Absolutely killed it. Um, I mean, this was like a completely realistic CV. This is probably the most realistic thing we've done in the CVs, and I think I mean, May in real life is like a teenager, and I was like, oh, you know, you're going to be playing up until elderly, like Alice. We're going to see Alice from like from an infant to an old lady, and May was like, yeah, sure, cool, killed it, really good. Really rolled with the punches, really like put through the ringer. Like Alice has I mean, Alice literally watches her infant child die in her arms. Like it is very sad, very horrifying, and by the end, just like fully played it up, really good. Really was a star of that one. Um, Alcoholic Nick's The Gardener from CV12 is again Nick is the master at psychopaths. So good. He has like such an incredible like way of just being these characters that feel so lived in and so like just sitting in darkness. Like his characters just like live and breathe and sit in darkness. And again, like I've talked to Nick so many times, could not be a lighter, brighter, sweeter, like super sweet guy, very nice, sweet man, and just like has these dark characters. The gardener is like I mean he hits a pregnant woman. He's just like abusive, like not a great guy, super like beyond incel. unclear if his mother is alive, like fully talking to someone who may not be there, like is a absolute menace. Like absolute. Oh, also, welcome, King Arthur. How are you? Um, the gardener's an absolute menace, and we never know his name. We just know him as the gardener. Um, I just think Nick's ability to like go there and like I think especially with the CVs like some really problematic stuff happens in the CVs and you're either going with it or you're not going with it. And Nick, I always knew would go with it, and I really appreciated that. So Nick is of course on this list. Um, we have of course Dirk Striker on my honorable mentions from Aragorn from Truth or Tale. Dirk is Dirk is so ridiculous and fun. I mean he drives the whole Truth or Tale crew to this place in West Virginia and then like fully leaves them on the side of the road. Like I think what Ara does in Truth or Tale is so it's just so grounded in realism and like he's ridiculous without being a fanciful character, like a fanatical character. Like just he's a man who's obsessed with his truck, his weird sort of little rapey kind of truck. Not saying Dirk's a rapist, not a rapist, but like he's just it's a weird truck. It's a weird truck, but he is like it's like outfitted with like you know carpeting. It's so creepy and weird. And then people are throwing up on it and bleeding on it, and Dirk is like, get out, just get out of my fucking van. Um, Dirk also like there's an action sequence where he's fighting fucking drunk hillbillies. Like it is don't fuck with my shack. Yes, Dirk is like in terms of cameo performances, like I think are really knocked out of the park. Such a great. I love Dirk. Love me some Dirk. More honorable mentions: John Frieda, played by Swiftcut Lassie in Fresh Beginnings. I think John. Um, Again, we hadn't seen Swift really do the psychopath thing, um, and I think John is just this very not intrusive psychopath. I think there's something like what's difficult about psychopaths or any sort of character that's going off the rails is that if he's too distracting to the story or the person is too distracting to the story, um, uh, it it becomes it becomes sort of attention grabbing. And John was never attention grabbing. John was like really living in his own world, and I really loved with characters in especially in the CVs when like they feel lived in, like separate from the story. And I think the people who really made characters that were uh, you could tell could go on and exist outside of the CVs really succeeded. I think in the best, and I think obviously Swift has been in every single CV, and we love her for that. And John Frieda is an iconic character, and has gone on to be iconic in other RPs, and we love John Frieda. Final honorable mention is Cedric Hester, also from CV11, played by Maddie. Um, I think Maddie did say that they worked really hard on this backstory. Um, worked really really hard on this backstory, and uh, Cedric was just a sweet magician who is coming to this end of life care and had this was living in this gay relationship that was unrequited and sort of a will they won't they situation. And again, sort of like John, like Cedric had such a super rich, deep backstory, and it was really great to work with Maddie to use that backstory in the young Cedric version when he had to fight himself. Um, and Maddie's a fucking master. Maddie did such a great job with Cedric, and again, Cedric's another one that I was in the top 12, and I rearranged it several times and got through it. But I love Cedric. I think Cedric's so fantastic. But we have to keep it to 12. So here are my top 12 favorite CV characters of all time from CV 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Here we go. This is like a year and a half worth of role play. This is it. These are my favorites. Number 12, and these are going to shock you probably, for those who know them. Yasui Bouillant, Sui, played by Vel from CV7 Ni. Um, I think what Vel did with Sui was play a really like an ingenue, like a very sort of meek and mild ingenue who she's a servant. Like she essentially was. She needs the money. She needs to work at this really horrible lady's um, hotel, and she's being abused essentially. And she's not only being abused, but she's being tugged in so many different ways. Like what I think is really interesting, and I don't know that Vel would agree with this, but I loved that Vel allowed Sui to be pulled in several different directions. Miss Manchu wanted Sui to be a good servant, and then I think it was Ivan was like trying to romance Sui, and then Lee was also in the corner obsessing over Sui and being his fucking incel self, and she was like caught in the middle of all of these entities, and she essentially was like, I have to keep my job. I thought it was very, very smart the way Vel played it, and was really strong. I mean, I'm always extremely impressed by role players who role play in situations that they've like clearly never been in, and like obviously Vel has never been a servant in the 1800s, so it was really impressive to watch Vel like really embody this very sort of meek and mild character, which Vel is not like meek and mild, like very cool, very chill. But it was so strong, so good, and I loved what they did with that. Number 11, Katya, or Ekaterina Irunas Sharapova, played by Swiftcut Lassie from CV5, Enemy of the State. Katya, I mean, you want to talk, queen of the backstory. Swiftcut Lassie always has a really deep ass backstory. Katya just had this sort of really contentious relationship with her family, and she was dealing with this pull of like being a part of this group of anti-fascists who were trying to do the right thing, but also like she was trying to appease her parents, who she loved very much, and her brother, who died. And it was a very, just very, very, very interesting scenario, and the scenes where all the players had to live in this sort of dream state where they had to confront their deepest fears. Katya had to like fight her own family, which was like very deep and emotional. And I don't know if she cried at that one. I think she said she cried, but it was incredible scene. I think Katya has like a very strong character arc, strong character arc that eventually ends in her death. But it was super, super, super good. 1 second. God, I have to scratch my throat, and it feels so good. Number 10 is Cheeks Ferguson, played by Leah from the Fergusons. I think Leah had such a great run in CV1 as the psychopath, Shikosari. And I loved the sort of heel turn that they made with CV2, playing a completely nonverbal, super sweet character like Cheeks, who ends up being the hero. I put Cheeks on the heroes list as well. But just like a really strong performance in terms of just like complete, like the cannot speak, only communicated through hand signals, and it was one of the more interesting choices that anyone's ever made in the CVs character wise. And I thought it was such a great show of Leah's versatility as a role player to have this like big this character, and it paid off. Like Leah's Cheek survived. um that's fucking aura. Yeah, Cheeks has this incredible moment where I think Cheeks a girl. I think it's a girl, where she's trying to save her brother who gets shot by her father on the fucking steps of her house. It gets so wild, like, and she eventually escapes and she saves the day, which is insane. It's incredible. So I love Cheeks. Number 9 is the hero of all the CVs, Alex Rose, played by Princess Zoe, who is in CV9 Circles and CV12. He is here. I love Alex mostly because completely unlikely hero, pretty much went through CV9 being an asshole, and then ended up being the hero and had to like save everyone. I love a really strong character arc, and I think that's really good. And I think um, Zoe's actual confusion mixed in with Alex's confusion really played well. Assholes make the best heroes, says Ara, and I agree. And like Alex going from, and we were with like Alex Red and Mars had was fun. Yes, Alex and Off to Mars had this very horrible alliance of being like, yeah, I think we're okay with killing people. Like once they really settled into circles, they really took to the game a little better than most, um, which was so much fun to watch. Like uh, Maddie and Princess Zoe play off of each other. That was so fun. Yeah, so like I mean the character, I mean there couldn't be a stronger character arc than like being basically the villain of one CV to becoming the absolute unequivocal hero of the next one. So good. Um Alex, like I mean by the end, like if I think everyone was got very emotional when Alex passed away at the very end after she saved everyone. Um so good. Just so good. I think Zoe what Zoe did with Alex is like so strong, and like definitely like played the everyman, like turned Alex from villain to everyman beautifully. No notes. Love it. Number 8 is Alex's compatriot, old fucking Off to Mars, played by Maddie. CV9 Circles. I mean, Off to Mars could not be. I mean, when you talk about a character who is the furthest from the player, Off to Mars and Maddie would not be caught in the same house together. Like Off to Mars was horrible, evil, just like playing like eventually became, I mean, a psychopath in the way of a more sociopath, like started using the game circles to just sort of be like she was playing The Sims. Like just sort of like, okay, that one dies, this one dies, we'll vote for that one, that's fine, who cares, whatever. Just like completely nonchalant, didn't care that people were dying, totally like in her own world. I Off to Mars is like one of the most like one of the weirdest sociopaths I think the CVs has ever seen. Um, and I think what Maddie did with that was so strong. Oh no, my Celia isn't dying in the pool this time. Totally those vibes. Just like, oh, okay. And that scene, which we'll get to later, was incredible. But I think out of all of Maddie's characters, I think Off to Mars is like easily my favorite. Number 7 goes to Magnus Carlsen. I love Magnus. I think um, Magnus is just like he's another really strong character arc, which is like an unlikely hero. He starts played by Kitten, by the way. This is from CV10. Um, Total playboy, probably has some kids running around. Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. Like total fuck boy. And then it's time to marry off, and he's accepting. He's reticent, but he's accepting. And then he meets Victoire and like very slowly falls in love with her. I think it's they both Dio and Kitten played this very good slow burn of it's not really will they won't they. It's sort of like when will they, which I thought was so smart and so good. And Magnus is such a he ends up really like I have him on my heroes list. He ends up being a very uh, strong protagonist. I mean, he ends up moving the story forward. He ends up trying to help Mary Major, and everyone starts to really confide in him. He starts to be sort of the lightning rod for every character. Like Thomas, like goes to Magnus. Mary goes to Magnus. Victoire goes to Magnus. Gabriel goes to Magnus. Like Magnus ends up being this central point for everyone because he seems like the one who is the most level-headed, and there's a reason why he ends up being the survivor. You know, there's a reason why he ends up being the final boy. Um, and and Magnus the Magnet. We love Magnus. He's so good. And I talked to Kitten, and again, like, she tells me that he probably went on and got married and always thought about Victoire ever since. It's so sad. So sad. Number 6 is Dark Wolfie, played by Dio from CV9 Circles. Dark Wolfie, I was certain as the sun was going to win Circles. Um, you know, the conceit of Circles was that everyone had to vote um, certain things to get get certain people killed and stuff like that. And I thought everyone was going to fall in love with Dark Wolfie. Dark Wolfie had a very dark backstory, completely bedridden, sick their whole life, and oh, motorcycle, hi motorcycle, and completely like sick their whole life, and ended up having this meeting this very tragic end. And I think that uh, what Dio did with Wolfie was so what Dio did with Wolfie was so strong and so layered and so palatable, and you wanted to root for Wolfie the whole way through, um, which was it just was good. It just was good. Um, Number 5, we got our boy Nalam here with Isidore Immortel from CV5, Enemy of the State. Isidore Immortel, there's never been a character in the CVs like Isidore. There's never been a character since, before or since. Isidore is a like real life troll, just completely chaotic neutral, has no moral code, um, goes through the events of CV5. I mean, the conceit of CV5 was that, there's um, this rebellion group who gets locked up in Russia, um, and eventually Isidore like is fully ready to sell out the rest of the crew to save his own skin, which was amazing. I mean, it's funny because like I didn't put Isidore on the villains list because he's technically not a villain. I mean, he kind of is. He does some villainous things. I mean, he does act for himself, but he's. I mean, Nalam's a actual writer, so it is no shock to me that he's on this list because I think what Nalam did with Isidore was so just a he's such a weird character. And there's this iconic scene where Isidore has to fight himself, because everyone has to fight their biggest either their biggest fears or the thing they need to overcome the most. And what Isidore needed to overcome was ego death, and or he needed to find ego death. He needed to overcome his ego, so he had to fight himself. So there's this great scene where Isidore is literally fighting a bunch of Isidores, which is so good. Um, Isidore's death is one of big controversy because Nalam says he did not understand the final role, but I think he's just lying. Yeah, Isidore ends up like there's like a final run through, like they're running out of the building as it's on fire, or it's getting radiated by Glowboy, and Isidore dies in the very last roll, which is like, ugh. That was when I was like, God, can I just take that away? Can I just like cheat on that one? But yeah, Isidore ended up being the very, very, very last to die. I love Isidore. Such a chaotic character. So good. Um, Number 4 is Hildegard Major, played by Swiftcut Lassie. Uh, just like in really, really, really incredible. Like, I mean, Swift, we all know, like, Swift does layered characters all day in her sleep. But period of the game. Can I cheat on this? Yes, yes, you could have. I know. I wish I had. Hildegard, she grows up in this family that's hated. The majors are sort of the prize of town. She has this great scene where someone literally throws a bag of shit at her, um, and she like I think she like takes that bag and like throws it back. I don't know what she does, but she she's kind of spicy. She's kind of saucy. She's independent, but then she goes to the island. She meets Thomas, and she falls in love, and it creates a huge rift in the sisters, and especially with her mother. And this whole time Mary is like really gung-ho about like getting her kids married off, and then Hildy meets Thomas, and Mary's like, okay, I want you to get married off, but not that one. He seems a little weird. He's a little religious zealot. I don't really trust men like that. And Hildegard falls in love, and she has this really great moment because she's been with her family this whole time, and she essentially disavows them to go live with Thomas. And she's like, you know, I'm gonna go do this. Y'all can come with me or not. And it's so powerful and so strong. And Hildegard, I mean, just goes fucking through it. Like she and shout out to Swift because I know she Swift is not pleased with the things that I put Hildegard through, but yeah, I think Swift, I mean, just sort of did a great job of with dealing with the tragedies of Hildegard ends up killing her sister, finding out horrible things about her husband, who she's consummated a relationship with, and eventually becomes a harpy. And it's very very sad. I just think it is Swift's strongest character in the CVs, hands down. Number three is Victoire Major. Victoire Major from played by Dio from CV10. For So Deep Is Our Love. Like I said, for the heroes, I mean, Victoire is like just. I mean, Dio, it just like fucking killed it with this one. Like, I think just the amount of shit that Victoire goes through, like in the very early part of the role play where Victoire is blamed for the murder of an unborn child, and like she's, you know, damn near sexually assaulted by the husband of the family, and then she goes through this, you know, semi-romance with Magnus, and then trying to keep her sisters in line and fighting with her mother. And like I just think that like Dio's portrayal of Victoire is so real, and it's like it is like storybook. It is like it like her character could have been turned into a full novel. It's just like the chef's kiss of characters. And I was like, it was, you know, there's sometimes with CVs like you have to sort of nudge characters one way, and I had to sort of like, you know, help people out who were a little confused. But like Dio, Swift is another one. Like Dio just like hands off, just like let them do what they do. Victoire is kind of a perfect character. Number two is Li Zhang from CV7 Ni. This one's played by Useless Shadow. Like I said with the villains, I think the one of the greatest joys of the CVs is getting to watch um, players really use their imagination. And I think it's very easy for a lot of role players to just sort of like make versions of themselves. But I think when I got to see like the players create completely different people, I was like, oh, that is interesting. And I think that's exactly what Shadow did with Lee. Lee is like a complete incel, and you watch him become an incel, which is really interesting. Like you literally watch him become a regular person. You see him stewing, and then he fully starts to lose his mind, and you're watching him like slowly lose his mind, which is so great. And like the slow burn of it all, like Shadow really like knew how to take his time, let him cook. That's right. He really let him cook. And then eventually Lee just fucking starts killing people. Like it it was such a shock to watch the character. I mean, in terms of CVs, like the character arc on Lee is unmatched, super unmatched, incredible. I can't say enough great things about Lee. I think he's absolutely on the top 12 list. And number one, my absolute favorite CV character, I have to say, is none other than Thomas Carlson, played by Down by Six from CV10 For So Deep Is Our Love. I think I again, like this is another one of the situations where like wisdom beyond DBS's years. Like DBS is a young guy. I think like the complexity of Thomas was phenomenal, just like phenomenal. With his relationship with his father, he had a very contentious relationship with his father. He had an equally like strange relationship with his mother, and his decision to go into the priesthood, um, where he's so connected to this faith that eventually killed him in the end. Like he goes to this island and they all start anew, and he falls in love with Hildegard, of course, but you see that he has these sort of ambitions to be this basically celebrity, and he never is really fully able to express it. But he becomes this he becomes this force on the island in Oceania, where because he's the island's priest, he is this great celebrity, and they start building him a house, and he becomes quote unquote the wealthiest person on this island, and he has to reckon with the idea that he realizes that he's a fraud. Like he's creating these miracles that he doesn't understand, and he doesn't know why they're happening, and he just goes along with it, and he thinks he's not sure what's real and what's not, and eventually when his sort of very light greed, and the great thing about it is that like Thomas never becomes like a megalomaniac. He's always like he always thinks he's connected to his his wife and his faith, but it all literally eats him at the end. He's relatively grounded. Yes, Jesse's in here, by the way. Congratulations on being my favorite character, Jesse. Um, it's all like relatively, it's all grounded, and it's all realistic, and it's all like relatable. That's the thing that's like, Thomas is not an unrelatable character. Like you can see how any of us would fall into that position of everyone telling you that you're amazing, everyone telling you that you are this person, and you sort of being like, I guess I am this person. And it it just like yeah, it just killing him. Jesse says, I'll hold by this stance. Thomas ain't the tenth of the character without everyone else. Yes, the cast of Forces Divas Our Love is unmatched. It's incredible. Um, I think Thomas. I think what DBS did with Thomas was super fucking smart, super fucking uh, super layered, and his death by the end is so powerful and so earned, um, that you just it's undeniable. I love Thomas Carlson. Is my favorite CV character. Now we're going to talk favorite CV moments. We have two more. This is favorite CV moments, and then we'll do favorite CVs of all time. Um, so we're going to start with a few honorable mentions. Um, the first honorable mention is entitled "Sebastian Can't Save Her" from CV1 The Vines. I loved, he's in this situation with Sebastian's in this, he's the last two, him and Nikki, the exes, they're together but they're no longer, and there's this moment in the roles where the ruins collapse and Nikki is hanging off of the side of the ruins, and Sebastian tries to save her, and I think there's sort of a realization of like, I care about you, I don't want you to die, and they go through sort of their history of their relationship, where they have flashbacks, and eventually Nikki falls to her death, and it's so like, oh, it's so like heartbreaking, um, that Sebastian like has to watch someone that he cared about die. It was so powerful. Um, Next moment, Kieran almost makes it. I talked about it earlier, like one of the most powerful one of the not powerful, but like one of the most like damn it deaths. Kieran almost, he breaks away from the group. He gets upstairs. He's confronted by the wolves. He almost figures out how to get away, and then he gets murdered by the wolves. It's so like, oh, there's another universe where Kieran survives. There's another universe where Kieran survives. It makes me so sad. Anyway, um, CB5 Truth or Tale. It was Maisie all along. One of my I didn't put her on my favorite NPCs list, but Maisie, the little girl, who the cast and crew run into, and sort of helps along in this town that sort of seemingly has no one in it, uh, is so creepy, and there's this great scene where someone picks up the video camera and records everyone sleeping, and it's so fucking creepy. And when I wrote it, I was like, "Ugh, this is like my worst nightmare. Is like someone being in my house and recording me or something." It's like, ugh. And so like finding out that Maisie was sort of meant to be the one to bring them to the Mothman, was as sort of like a procurer, was really, you never suspect the child, but it's always the child. It's always a child. Um, Isidore fights himself. I talked about it earlier. Like Isidore having this incredible scene where he has to fight a bunch of hymns is so comical and like symbolic, and I think what Nolan did with that scene was so much fun. It's such a goofy scene. Um, Gav is in on it. CV12, he is here. I think the big reveal, Gavin's sort of this bumbling idiot, this cokehead, this fucking degenerate, and then finally he gets downstairs and he leads everyone to these harpies who need to feed, and he gets most of them killed. And then by the end he goes, do I still get paid if I 2 out of 3? Do I still get paid? And this realization that he'd sort of been faking it this whole time so that he could uh, once again procure people to their death. Um, Augustus isn't dead from CV10. One of my favorite, in my honorable mentions, but one of my favorite planned story points. I was talking to Nick about a fun way to introduce his character, and basically, I didn't tell everyone, which was really fun. Um, was that we were starting off with his funeral, and he would eventually show up at his funeral because he wasn't dead. Everyone just thought he was lost at sea and that he died, and he shows up at his funeral, and it nearly kills his father, which is great. I just love that sort of surprise moment, and even the players were surprised, and that was really fun. And then final honorable mention is what I call Dirk leaves them, which was super fun. I mean, CV5, was very notorious because we had a lot of players leaving. Is pre-funeral for the father. That's right, Kermit. That's right. Um, Dirk leaves them. I think like really iconic. We had a lot of people leaving, and Ara wanted to leave, and so it was like, let's find a fun way to have Dirk exit the CV. And so we had Dirk. We had, I mean, they essentially, so they're driving along. They're driving along this dark path. They're getting to this area, and they they come across this bloodied lady, and Dirk is like, I'm not having this in my car. I'm just not doing it. And everyone's like, oh, we got to get you. We got to get her to a hospital, and everyone seems to be like bumbling and fucking up. And eventually, Dirk is just like, you know what? No, everyone's leaving. Everyone. And it was so great to have that happen because it was one of those moments. I mean, CV5 was just like essentially me scrambling to like, you know, explain away why this character left or why this is happening, but Dirk leaving them on the side of the road was such a great catalyst. It ended up being the perfect catalyst to start CV5, um, and it ended up really working itself out. And I just love that. Dirk knew first aid, wasn't trying to help. Nobody listened. They messed up his carpet, so they had to go. They had to go. So now we're gonna get into the top 12. Here we go. My number 12 favorite CV moment was what I called Milita and Mommy time. So so it was become very clear that like Mommy and Daddy Ferguson were not well. They were essentially they were basically buying children who had disabilities or something going on, and feeding them to Friendo. And um, there was various reasons for that, but it was this very hugely problematic family, to say the least. And one of the first victims was Milita, played by Kitten, and mom basically tells Melissa that they're going to go swimming in the lake, which is obviously where Friendo hangs out. They're going to go swimming in the lake, and there's this really, I mean, Kitten played this so well, and we talked a lot about like I forgot what it's called, God modding or something, but Kitten was really teaching people a lesson in like your character doesn't know what the player knows. So I loved Kitten's like honesty in the way that she approached this scene, because she knew that she was going to her death, but she, Milita didn't. She's 10 years old. So it's this really horrible scene where, mom keeps telling Milita to come further into the lake, further into the lake, further into the lake, and then she tries to drown her, and there's this horrible struggle, and she fully drowns her. And I think it's the first like really really like dark cruel scene that I think happened in the CVs. I mean, CV1 had a lot of like really harrowing death scenes, but this is one of the ones that was like, oh god, I can't believe like mom just fully drowns her daughter, for a sacrifice. So that's definitely my number 12. Number 11 is What Happened to Madison Parker, CV5, Truth or Tale. The ending after all of the events of CV5, I mean, you really want a really strong ending, and I think CV1, CV2, these endings had like some of them were pretty happy, and all things considered, and just coming off of CV4 where everyone had survived, um, this was sort of a big moment, and Shadow was so so this ending really depressed him, but Madison gets to the very end. I talked about it in my favorite survivals. Madison gets to the end and gets rounded up by the police, and the police are just sort of like, so you killed them, didn't you? And Madison's like, no, you don't understand. Mothman did it. And like, yeah, sure, Mothman did it. And I think it became pretty clear that like the town was in on it. So the town had essentially um, worshiping this Mothman, and they sort of like similar to CV1, they had to keep it contained in this town, but the Mothman had to feed, so they were they couldn't let Madison escape. So it's unclear what happened to Madison. It was all on camera, but they don't know. They have no idea what happened to Madison, and I imagine she ended up getting fed to the crib. I don't know. I don't know what happened to her, but I love that ending. One of my favorite moments. Moment number 10, Lee loses it. CV7 knee. I mean, I said it before. I think Lee's like slow burn into madness, that descent into madness, just the realities of the fact that he's poor, he's never going to, be as successful as Miss Manchu. He's also never going to find, in his eyes, like the love of his life, like Sui. He just completely loses his mind and goes on a killing spree. And the and I said earlier, half of the knee kills in CV7, um, fire. Maybe she got fed to the moth. I love that ending. It's true though. Uh, Lee essentially like, I mean, he kills like half the cast, which is like incredible. Just like just a it's so fucking crazy, and I love it. And I tell Shadow all the time. I think that it's so cool, and Shadow often was insecure about that role, but I think he did a phenomenal job with that. Another, and this next one, number 9, is also from the All Hell Breaks Loose. This is also the first time that we had what I like to call a CV freakout, which it only happened a couple times, but there were times when just like what an unexpected fight would happen in the CVs, and then it would just be the catalyst for all the shit going loose. So the I forgot exactly what the fight was about. I'm trying to remember. It was like essentially that like um it was essentially that everyone was sort of upset with Miss Manchu about the way that she was treating her staff, and the way that she was running her business, and there's a newspaper article about the fact that someone had died at the hotel, and it felt like she wasn't being honest, and Charlotte especially led the charge on that, getting very in Miss Manchu's face, and eventually it got violent, and they were like chasing Miss Manchu around the mansion, and it just like the chaos of everyone being trapped or cooped up in this hotel had sort of come alive. And I remember everyone was talking in the DMs, and I was just like, wow, this is like completely unexpected. It was so everyone was just like freaked the fuck out, and it really led to my other favorite moment, which was Lee losing it. Then everyone just made like wild choices. Just like, I'm unhappy, and we're just gonna fuck it up. And it was Has Been Hotel. It was a huge moment that ended up starting all the shit. Um, Number 8, my favorite moment is I called Alex Saved Them All, from CV12. This is like the very end of CV12, um, after another one of my favorite moments. But you realize that Alex has rewritten the code of everyone in the CVs, and all these characters are now like have been I was gonna say reincarnated, but are now existing in a reality where they are all safe and they're not in the CVs, and they're alive and well and doing great things. And it was kind of nice. So Alex is an old lady now. She's at death's door, quite literally, and she's being wheeled around, and she sees all of these people who she watched in the CVs, um, and she sees them all like sort of recognizing her, but they can't quite figure out where they placed her. And one of them comes up and says, "I feel like I'm supposed to say thank you to you." And it's this really like beautiful, touching moment of Alex saving all the characters from the CVs, and she got to see them all flourish. And you saw Victoire and Magnus, and it was, yeah, Kermit was there. Kermit was there. It was very beautiful. So I loved that. And then the final moment of Alex dying was also really nice too. Um, Moment number 7. I had been planning this moment since I started the CVs. Um, I'm calling this Gabriel's final entrance. Um, of course, it's so pretty. I didn't even have those character stories. I know. Gabriel's final entrance. Uh, it was such a really. So I thought of the character Gabriel because there's this great song by, I think his name is Joe Stoddard, called Gabriel, and he's this house producer, and he ended up making this really cool remix to this song called Gabriel, which is a song about essentially a man who's kind of losing his way, sort of like Gabriel, the fallen angel, and he made a like an orchestral version of it, which I've posted somewhere here. And so when I heard the orchestral version, I was like, I really like saw this sort of grand entrance. And Gabriel's been up into the CVs. He's changed identity so many times. So I wanted to have him to have like a grand entrance. And so I'm trying to see if I could like read a little bit of it, because I loved it so much. It was so much fun to type out. It's probably too far now. Um, but it was, he just like basically what happened was he was flanked by a bunch of violinists, a bunch of like everyone was dressed in black because he was walking through heaven where everyone was in white, and everyone was dressed in black, and you saw these dancers who had these violins, and they were playing the orchestral version of Gabriel, and they were there's dancers who were coming around and like killing people. So there's like a performance and also like a violent attack, and it was this huge like dance piece where everyone was like, you know, introducing this this being back into heaven. And it was so cool and so much fun to do. And I'd been like waiting to do that the whole for like a year and a half. I was happy to finally do it. Um, Number 6 is What She Was Doing to Them. CV for the dating game. Yes, exactly, Laura. CVs are very known for having a very like a twisted reveal. We love a twisted reveal, and I would say CV4 is considered. I mean, there's a holy trinity of the horrible reveals, and CV4 is definitely one of them. And CV4's reveal. So the conceit of CV4 is that we are all in this 1960s dating show, and everyone's like, they're trying to figure out who's gonna pick the Bachelorette and all that stuff, and it's very fun. And then it comes to pass. It comes to realize that they're actually not in a they're not in a 1960s game show. They're actually in um, they're actually like it's actually 10 years later. They're actually in the 70s. They have been locked in that chamber for quite some time, and there's a machine. This is what we called CV science. Um, they realize they're in a room. I feel like I want to say trigger warning, but I don't even know what to trigger. But it's gross. So here we go. Um, they're all in rooms. These men, and their genitals are connected to a tube, and each of these tubes is connected to one tube that is going inside of what comes to be Kathy Turner, and comes. So Kathy is hooked up to these men genitally, and so she's essentially extracting sperm from them to make a baby. And it is one of the most like disgusting fucking. When I wrote it, I was like, "This is horrible." I have asked people to be a part of this, and it's so disgusting, and it's so horrible, and the the reality of it is also really strange because it just like she has just been like she has just been tricking these men into making her have a baby. Like it's the R word. Like it's giving R word. Um and it was when it happened, I think when I brought the reveal to life, I think the players were just like so disgusted they didn't know what to say. And it's one of the ones like it's funny because out of all of the disgusting reveals, um, God, out of all the disgusting reveals, I think that one um, is the one I think that makes most people uncomfortable. Uh, and yeah, it just is. It's a wild reveal, and she ends up getting away with it too, and she gets some babies out of it. So you know, I guess she won. I mean, she dies later on, but I guess she won there. Um, and need more meddling kids. That's right. Number 4 is the truth is in their eyes slash siblings. Now, this moment, actually, you know what? I'm actually going to replace this one. I'm gonna switch this one around. Um, because I think number 4 is actually the elevator birth. We'll get into the other one later. The elevator birth is an iconic CV moment. Uh, so basically in CV3, we have this doctor who's continuing his 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 reign of terror. He's trying to figure out how to get people to fuse with animals and do that whole thing sexually. And one of his old patients, Chrysalis, comes in, and she has gives birth to a half. I think it was a half. I forget what it was. Half like dog or half cow, half human, something like it's like a half cow, half human, or something like half pig, half human, or something. And it was just horrible and bloody and disgusting. And she gives birth to this monster that essentially the doctor has like made her consummate with. And Kieran witnesses it, and it is so horrifying, disgusting, and it is like the wildest fucking thing. Um, Number 3, the truth is in their eyes. Now, this is incredible because I did not intend this. So, the twist of For So Deep Is Our Love is, you have these two families who are coming together to, you know, get married. What we find out is that they're actually siblings, and that Gabriel has been spreading his seed all over the world, um, and uh, and has been basically making lots of children. So, what's most iconic about this moment is that I had everyone made a pick crew. A pick crew is like an art app that you can make profile pictures out of and stuff. So I had everyone make their pick crew, and something that was really shocking was that so not everyone is a Gabriel baby, and what was shocking about that? Oh, kitten's typing. What's shocking about that is that the people who were Gabriel babies had the same eye color. And by the way, I did not tell them anything. I did not give them any prompts. I did not give them any sort of idea of the story. They also didn't show each other their photos, so they didn't have reference points. On their own, the pick crews that had the same eye color were the people who were Gabriel kids, aka Harpy babies. And the one each the guys did. That's right, the guys did. Oh yeah, the guys knew. I forgot. And um, the siblings. There's one sibling of each. So Michelet was not a Harpy baby, and Magnus was not a Harpy baby, a Gabriel baby, and it was we didn't see their dad or mom though. That's right, yeah. And they looked like and yeah, and so people looked like it was so wild. It was so wild, and it was one of those very eerie things that I was like, I did not intend for this to happen. It's very creepy that this happened, and I just couldn't believe. I could not believe that. I couldn't believe it. It is still iconic to this day. We still talk about it and laugh. It is so good. Number two, favorite CV moment: the four-way murder CV circles. Now, yes, and Magnus looked like his dad because Magnus was actually his dad's son. By the way, it's wild. Um, CV4, CV9 circles. Um, so as you all know, I've said it many times. The everyone has to vote someone to die, and at some point, Off to Mars and Red Like Roses win the challenge, and they have to choose who dies, and they can choose up to four people dying. Off to Mars, being the absolute villain that she is, chooses for all four people to die. Two of those, like, and two of those people are kind of the heroes in the CVs, which was like amazing. Horrible, horrible person. Um, and does it so cavalierly and has no fucks. Um, so ends up killing. Off to Mars ends up killing Hatsune Miku, 893, Kitty Starfire, Horace Nepp, and Dominus, which are all actually some of the better people of the group, except for Hatsune Miku. But like Kitty Starfire, Horace, and Dominus were all like, well, actually Horace was a murderer, but Dominus and Kitty Starfire were were actually good people, and I really expected them to go to the end. And it was the shock of the four-way murder was incredible, and I couldn't believe it happened. And I was just I was hit for hire. I mean, you're being a Kitty Star for being a hit for hire. I still put her on my heroes list. You have to go back. I put her on my heroes list because I think she was a hero. But um, and finally, my favorite, absolute favorite moment from the CVs is the four-way murder. I mean, it's ooh shit. I already said that one. Um, what I called all for one. This is like the final moment against Gabriel. Alex versus Gabriel. How is she going to take on Gabriel with the help of everyone who's ever died in the CVs? And I loved. It was so cool. I made it so that every time someone gave Alex a word of encouragement, it buffed her stats, and eventually she was way over leveled for Gabriel and completely wiped her out. And it was so cool to watch everyone come back from the CVs pretty much and just like bring in their extra characters. It was so beautiful. I cried. I was like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. It was too cute. I loved it so much. It made me so very, very happy. And it was just a cool like culmination of all of like all the CVs, everyone's hard work, everyone's talent, everyone's creativity, like coming back. And it was just really beautiful. I loved it. All right. All right, here we go. Last moment, last thing. Top 12 CV stories. I love all my CVs. But you know, some are more fun than others. But I want to get into my favorites. So number 12 um, was CB11 Fresh Beginnings. I like Fresh Beginnings. Fresh Beginnings was interesting. I think it was the one I put the least thought into. Obviously, um, you know, it was a end of life care situation where they're actually trying to clone old men and replace them with their younger selves, a la kind of Get Out in a way. And it was interesting. It was a fun idea. Um, it was tough. I mean, I had to control five different stories and other characters as well. So it was a tough one. It was interesting, but it ended up birthing like some of the more interesting characters, like Cedric, like John. Um, and so that part in Haro, like that part was fun, but um, to me that was the one I had the not as much like fun doing because especially by that point I was also like planning for CV12, and I just come off of like CV10 was really exhausting, so I had to come off like in between of those, and I really had to get through it. So it was, you know, CV11 was one of my weaker ones, but I like that one still. Number 11, CV8, um, Night of the Living role play. Um, that was also like that was another one that was really lofty idea, which was that I was going to have the characters literally do the movie Night of the Living Dead. And I think when I came up with it, I was like, oh, this is like a really like meta idea. And then once we got into it, I was like, oh my god, I have to really do this. I was like, I'm gonna have to really um, fucking like steer the shit as much as I can. Um, and then just like the rules of the zombies was really challenging. But it was, I mean, I love Night of the Living roleplay because of the cast. I think like the characters that came out of CV8 were made it so much more fun. Like I love Dave, I love Laura, Wes, Imani. Um, it's so interesting. So I loved that. I loved that. But also like big challenge, big challenge. Um, my next favorite was number 10 was Truth or Tale. CV5 was challenging. I mean, we had famously like half the cast leave, which was like that was a challenging one, and that was like tough. And but it was a really fun. It ended up being like at first I was like, oh god, that kind of sucks. Everyone's leaving. But then I was like, oh okay, I think this is a good opportunity to like stay on my toes, stay on my feet, and that's why I really like this one over CV8 and CV11 because I it ended up being like a really fun challenge to right the ship and like um, I came up with some really good stuff on the fly that I don't think would have happened had people not left. So I think it ended up being a really fun writing challenge, and eventually I got very used to doing shit on the fly. So um, it was good. It was very good. I loved it. I like Truth or Tale, and I love the ending of Truth or Tale is one of my favorite endings of the CVs. Um, number 9 we have Knee, uh, CV7. CV7 is really fun. I think it's also the reason why it's not higher on the list is I think it was the reveal was a little bit underwhelming for me, but it was also a challenge to sort of to come up with the rules of the dolls, the knee dolls. Um, but I ended up having a lot of fun with it. And there's another knee is another one that's like Night of the Living role play, where the cast really was so strong and they really sold it and came out with some really wackadoo characters. So I love the cast of Knee, and that was our first total kill. Everyone died in Knee, which was interesting to get that far and have everyone die. So that was pretty iconic. CV8, the dating game, is my next favorite one. I mean, I'd known the reveal coming for quite some time, and that was real. I when I created the dating game, I was like, oh my god, I can't have them go through this. It's the only time, and I always told people I was like, whatever disgusting or like inappropriate thing that happens, the characters will not be involved. That's True, except for CV4. Technically, the characters are heavily involved in the very disgusting thing that happens in CV4, which is the forced sperm removal. But it's the dating game was another sort of wackadoo. This very wackadoo cast. It was the kind of fun thing about the dating game is that because of the red herring of them being in this dating game, I kind of could let the characters do whatever the fuck they wanted to. So it's like, the characters were making out with each other and doing all this weird stuff, and I was like, that's all great because y'all don't know what's coming. So they could literally just do whatever they wanted, and then they just had to make a final roll to see if they just survived. And it's funny because it's right next to Knee. Knee was a total kill. The dating game's the only time everyone survived. Um, so that was pretty cool, and I just love the reveal of the dating game. Um, CV6, Enemy of the State. This is my number 7 spot. I loved Enemy of the State is kind of the cult classic of the CVs, if you will. When I talked to a lot of people about like, oh, what's your favorite CV? A lot of people say Enemy of the State, and it was during the Hellies that year. It was talked about as being a possibility for winning best cast. It was a very small cast. It was five players, and the story was about these national these anti-nationalists who were jailed for being enemies of the state, and their punishment was going to this place where they essentially cooked children and made them into food. And so, I mean, again, like this birthed some of the most iconic characters, like Isidore Immortel, who's one of my favorites. Boria, his death is really iconic. Um, the one of the best moments of Isidore having to fight himself, and Katya is also a really iconic character. So I think Enemy of the State, again, the cast really makes an Enemy of the State that much more exciting, um, which was so much fun. Yeah. Number 6 is the Fox CV3. I mean, and this is another one of those talking about the holy trinity of disgusting CV moments, um, which is which is oh shit, did I miss a moment? I don't know that I did. Maybe I did. I don't know. Oh my god, I did. I totally forgot to miss. I missed a favorite CV moment. Okay, forgot to tell you this one, but I'll do it in number 5 was a Ferguson's moment after before the yellow before the elevator birth, after the dating game. But I'll get to it later. Um, CV3 is the Fox. The big disgusting thing in the Fox was that um, he Dr. Helsvik was basically forcing humans to impregnate animals, or animals to impregnate humans, and to create hybrid babies, and it was awful and disgusting, and I knew that was coming, and it was another one of those moments where I was like, are the cast going to hate me for this? Is this going to really fuck people up? But I think people were just like, couldn't believe it. It was such a fun, that was a fun reveal. So I love the Fox for that. CV1 is my number 5 spot. The first one, I mean, I love CV1. Iconic cast, iconic moments. I mean, people often tell me that the first one like obviously needed a lot of work, but I love CV1. I think it's so. Um, Besides the poor pacing, it is just like it is great role play. It's great moments that happen. Once it gets going, it really fucking gets going. You're so invested in the characters, and so their deaths mean a lot more. It was really great first shot, and it was cool to see everyone sort of come together. It was a big cast for that one. Number 4 is CV2, the Fergusons. I forgot to mention this is my number 5 favorite favorite CV moment. Um, he's not who he says he is. RTM, uh, as one of the kids, is revealed to actually be like a 40-year-old man, um, and he also oh yeah, so I talked about the Fergusons, where it's all these parents have gathered these kids with disabilities and are feeding them to Friendo, and one of the people that they adopt is RTM, and I'll have to go online chat room. Yeah, So RTM has been using makeup, and he's passed himself off as a young child, and it turns out that he is also trying to conjure Friendo, and so his daughter, he basically had his daughter come and work with the Fergusons, and when he realized that they needed basically they got it in their head that Friendo required children with disabilities. He earmuffs. I can't believe I did this. He impregnated his daughter and had a kid, and so and then it becomes the big reveal that the kid is actually Friendo, which is kind of iconic. And that's normal Alabama. God damn it! All right. So the Fergusons, again, holy trinity of gross things: the Fergusons, the Fox, and the dating game. Um, just disgusting reveals, and I loved it. Number 3 is CV12. He is here. I mean, the sort of monumental, like, big send off for the CVs was so much fun. Having 12 stories, having it span for my full year was so much fun. And then, I made it also sort of as a love letter to the cast, and having a huge cast, and everyone getting a chance to play all different kinds of people was just the coolest, and I loved all the different stories, and uh, I learned my lesson and had kept the story short, so that was good. Don't cry, fire! I can't have it. And number 2 is CV10. First Deep is Our Love is such a great. I mean, it's an epic CV. It's a long CV. It's a long one. It has so many different peaks and valleys and things that happen, but the cast is so committed. I mean, the characters are incredible. And the journey that everyone goes on is so fucking cool, and I loved, even though it took forever to do. It was so worth it, and I was happy that everyone stuck with me to get through it, because it was wild. It was so wild. And then finally, my favorite CV of all time, I got to go with my Helly winner. It's Circles. I love Circles. I think Circles. What I ended up doing was I used the format of RuPaul's Drag Race All Stars to come up with a game for Circles, which was that everyone else voted for each other. Like, they had to vote for who was to be murdered next, and that was really cool. And having everyone do all kinds, like, based on backstories, and everyone had to vote based on different criteria depending on the on the challenge was so fun, and the deaths were so gruesome and gnarly, and all the characters were interconnected. That was like, I worked so hard. Like, I've never worked harder on Circles. I was connecting everyone's backstories, and I was making a lot of, like, little secret things in the DMs and trying to figure out, like, who was doing what, who was connected to who. Like, it was a lot of math, and it was a lot of work, and it paid off, and it was so much fun, and everyone fucking killed it, and it was really cool. And that's it. That's I think that's the last time I'll talk about the CVs. We did it. Thank you. I love the CVs. I'm super proud of them, obviously. And I posted all my picks in the lobby. And I love what y'all did with the CVs. It was so much fun. I think I saw so many people become super creative. Kenzo, it's not gonna be the last time we talk about them. I'd like it to be. God, I would like to be. It was so fun to see everyone be so super creative, and become writers. And I saw a lot of people DM me and say, like, "Oh, the CVs inspired me to write more and create characters more." And it was really cool to hear that. And that was all I wanted. And I will come back to the RP space next year. I have 2 RPs in the works for next year. I'll give you a little teaser. One of them, and they're not CVs. CVs tell me how creepy I can be. So I'll give you a little teaser. Little teaser. So one is completely different. I have a complete Pokemon RP coming up, which will be using the threads, and it'll be super fun, and it'll hopefully be a more like evergreen kind of RP, um, which should be fun. And we'll be using the Pokemon bots within the RP, which will be fun. And then the next one, that one doesn't have a title yet, but we'll work on that. And then the next RP is called The Sickness of Me, and it is about a generational family that has a generational sickness that causes them to have all kinds of different experiences. So all players play characters from present day, from I think the 70s, and I think from the 1870s, and I think from prehistory. And so we'll have a um, whole like it's the Ohio disease, yes, sort of like that. So it'll be fun. It'll be a fun little thing, and hopefully and Pokemon RP I would hopefully like to be more evergreen. Um, and I'm hoping that it'll be like players will have to fight, like we'll assign everyone to be like the whatchamacallit, the what do you call those things? The gym leaders, and then you like move on to the next town, like you're Ash. And like I said, we'll be working the threads. So you'll like travel to each town. Each town will be a thread. And then the sickness of me, I think, will be hopefully shorter, and we'll do it like I don't know. Like I want to do it as like we're gonna stay in like one time period per like for like a week maybe. Like we'll like, do a week in the 70s, a week in present day, a week in prehistory. So that should be fun. Hopefully coming next year. And that's all. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please go enjoy each other's RPs, make RPs, write more, do things, have fun. Go back over the list. Um, I posted them in the lobby. Let me know what you think if you missed this and want my explanation again. But I posted favorite CVs, favorite moments, favorite characters, favorite deaths, favorite survivals, favorite villains, favorite heroes, favorite NPCs. So you all are nice and sexy and have big fat dicks. Bye.